Chapter 1. Broken Jade Tripod. In the heavenly armor continent, the strong were respected. In this place, the weak were as insignificant as ants while the strong were as vast as mountains. Some of the strongest could even split rivers and seas, split mountains and split rocks. There were even those with great divine power who could shatter the void and break the cycle of reincarnation. The human body had 7 souls and 6 spirits. However, the people of the heavenly armor continent were very special because they were born with the 8th soul. This 8th soul was called the armor soul. The armor soul had a strange and unpredictable power. Moreover, different types of armor souls had different powers. For example, the flame armor soul could create raging flames, the ice armor soul could release 10,000-year-old ice, the berserk martial soul could increase one's strength in an instant, and there were many other armor souls with similar special abilities. In order to unleash more of the power of one's armor soul, one had to create armor that was suitable for oneself in order to stimulate the potential power of the armor soul. Therefore, the warriors of the heavenly armor continent basically wore special armor when they fought. Therefore, the warriors of the heavenly armor continent were also known as armor warriors. Tingjia City, Zhua family. In a dilapidated loft, Zhuowen slowly woke up. When he saw the unfamiliar surroundings, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. Where is this? Just as Zhuowen was about to struggle to get up, he suddenly discovered that his right arm was slightly heavy. Looking closely, Zhuowen suddenly discovered that there was a young girl resting on his arm. The young girl looked no more than 11 or 12 years old, and her face was very young and tender. Perhaps because Zhuowen's movements were too loud, the girl who was sleeping soundly woke up. When she saw that Zhuowen had woken up, her face immediately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. "Young master. You're finally awake, that's great." Looking at the familiar yet strange woman in front of him, a strange memory suddenly appeared in Zhuowen's mind. This memory was like a tidal wave crashing into Zhuowen's brain. In just a moment, Zhuowen already knew the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that he had actually transmigrated by accident. Zhuowen was originally an ordinary medical student on Earth. He picked up a broken jade cauldron by chance, but he did not expect that the inconspicuous jade cauldron was actually the item that the dense fog, a very large organization on Earth, was looking for. In a daze, he was assassinated by the dense fog. In his many escapes, Zhuowen was finally killed by the assassins of the dense fog. Before he died, Zhuowen remembered that the jade cauldron in his hand seemed to have turned into a ray of light and entered his body. After that, he completely fell into darkness. When he woke up, he found himself in an unfamiliar environment. Looking at the somewhat restrained Chun air in front of him, Zhuowen roughly understood the situation of this body. It turned out that the original owner of this body was also called Zhuowen. He was the 3rd young master of the Zhua family, one of the 3 major powers in Rattan Armor City. He had never seen his mother when he was born. As for his father, he had disappeared 10 years ago. His grandfather was the head of the Zhua family, Zhua Xiangding. The Chun heir in front of him was left behind by his father. Although Chun heir had been serving Zhuowen since she was sensible, Zhuowen had always treated her like his own sister. After all, this was the only trace of his father left behind. The original Zhuowen cherished this very much. As for why Zhuowen had fainted before, it was mainly because Zhuowen had undergone the awakening ceremony in the martial arts arena yesterday. However, he did not awaken his own armor spirit, which meant that this body was born without an armor spirit. The awakening spirit tablet stood in the middle of the martial arts arena. If the children of the Zhua family wanted to awaken their armor spirit, they had to go through the awakening spirit tablet. If they were lucky enough to succeed, the tablet would emit different colors. The different colors represented the quality of the awakened armor soul. The armor soul's quality was ranked from the 1st grade to the 10th grade. The colors were respectively white, blue, yellow, green, purple, orange, red, gold, platinum, and pure gold. The higher the quality of the armor spirit, the greater the potential of the armor spirit. Correspondingly, the achievements in the future would be higher. The highest quality armor spirit of the Zhua family was Zhuowen's uncle, Zhua Beiqian's daughter, Zhua Xiang. It was said that the color of her armor spirit was orange. This was considered one of the best in the entire Rattan armor city. Because Zhuowen did not awaken his armor spirit, Zhuo Xiangding was pressured by the higher-ups of the family. According to the family rules, Zhuowen was demoted to an ordinary child of the family. All the resources and wealth that he used to enjoy were confiscated. The family was divided into an inner courtyard and an outer courtyard. The inner courtyard was very rich in vitality. It was the residence of the family's direct descendants and core disciples. The outer courtyard was the residence of the ordinary disciples and servants with no talent. In the inner courtyard, Zhuowen also had a luxurious pavilion called the Concentrated Fragrance Pavilion. However, it had been confiscated by the family. What made Zhuowen even angrier was that the housekeeper of the Concentrated Fragrance Pavilion, Zhuo Xinya, whom he had once trusted, had personally kicked him out of the house in order to curry favor with Zhuo Wen's cousin, Zhuo Wu. Moreover, she had even taught Zhuo Wen a lesson in front of everyone. Until now, Zhuowen still could not get rid of the arrogance on Zhuo Xinya's beautiful face and the ugly face of a villain who had gained power. In his memory, Zhuowen remembered that Zhuo Xinya was just an insignificant person in the outer courtyard. Because of his guidance, her status had soared and she had finally taken the position of housekeeper of the Concentrated Fragrance Pavilion. Zhuowen did not expect that this beautiful woman would repay kindness with ingratitude and ruthlessly trample on her benefactor. It was because of this series of blows that the original Zhuowen was mentally and physically exhausted. After returning, he fell ill and died. Therefore, the current Zhuowen had the opportunity to enter this body. That slut is really a good-for-nothing. If I have the chance to turn over a new leaf, I will definitely make that slut regret her choice. Although the memory was not the real Zhuowen, Zhuowen still felt very angry. What Zhuowen hated the most in his life were those shameless people who repaid kindness with ingratitude. Barely supporting his tired body, Zhuowen was speechless as he looked at the thin arms and legs in front of him. The quality of this body was too poor. It was much worse than his body, which used to be a university student who just ate and waited for death. Chun Er. This young master is a little hungry now. Quickly get me something to eat. At this moment, Zhuowen realized that his stomach was growling loudly. It was obvious that this body had not eaten for a long time. Chun Er's big eyes blinked as she looked at Zhuowen. Then, with a slightly red face, she turned around. A pair of white jade hands reached into her bedclothes and took out a palm-sized steamed bun and handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at Chun Er's chest with a surprised expression. No wonder he felt that the little maid in front of him was so well endowed. It turned out that she stuffed a steamed bun. Looking at Zhuowen's wretched gaze, Chun Er's face became even redder. She pouted and said, "I secretly took this out from the kitchen. Now that young master's status is no longer the same as before, young master should try to eat sparingly." Looking at the dry steamed bun in his hand and glancing at Chun Er who was obviously swallowing her saliva, Zhuowen's heart suddenly felt warm. He knew that Chun Er must have left this for him to eat. With a slight smile, Zhuowen broke the steamed bun in half and handed the other half to Chun Er. He said softly, "You eat too. Looking at you, I know that you haven't eaten either. But why is our food so little? Although I am now an ordinary disciple, I should have 3 meals a day." Chun Er did not stand on ceremony. She quickly took the steamed bun and gnawed on it. She said vaguely, "It's all because of Zhuo Xinya." She deliberately asked the kitchen steward to reduce young master's food. When Zhuowen heard this, a cold light suddenly shot out from his eyes. He did not expect Zhuo Xinya to be so ruthless. Even though he had been demoted to an ordinary disciple, she still did not let him go. After the two of them finished eating the steamed bun, Chun Er instructed Zhuowen to recuperate well and went out to work. Lying quietly on the bed, Zhuowen looked at the somewhat dilapidated house and could not help but sigh to himself, "This third young master is really a coward. If I have the chance, I will definitely take back everything that belongs to this body." Just as Zhuowen was talking to himself, Zhuowen suddenly felt a splitting headache. The headache only lasted for a while. Then, Zhuowen was surprised to find that an old jade cauldron had appeared in his mind. The jade cauldron sat in the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. If it was not for the headache, Zhuowen would not have noticed that the jade cauldron had appeared in his mind. Looking carefully, Zhuowen found that the shape of the jade cauldron in his sea of consciousness was exactly the same as the jade cauldron he had obtained on Earth. Could it be that the brilliance I saw at that time was the jade cauldron in my hand that entered my sea of consciousness? Zhuowen frowned and thought, becoming more and more certain of his guess. Suddenly, the jade cauldron that was sitting quietly in the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness trembled slightly. Then, a message appeared in his mind. The body is weak, and there are many internal injuries. It is recommended to consume the common Tier 1 medicinal pill, body strengthening pill. Because the host's body is weak and the host's 8th soul has been detected, do you wish to exchange the 8th soul for the body strengthening pill? 8th soul. Could it be that there is an armor soul in my body? But isn't the awakening soul tablet unable to awaken the armor soul in my body? Zhuowen frowned. He immediately discovered a faint figure hidden not too far away from his sea of consciousness. The figure was an extremely delicate and almost withered blade of grass. Grass armor soul. And it is a grass armor soul that is about to wither. No wonder the awakening soul tablet could not detect it. Zhuowen was speechless as he looked at the grass armor soul in the corner of his sea of consciousness. The grass armor soul was the lowest grade armor soul in the heavenly armor continent. It was not even comparable to a Tier 1 armor soul. It could be considered a completely useless armor soul. Moreover, the grass armor soul in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness was about to wither. On the surface, there was almost no soul power fluctuation. No wonder the awakening soul tablet could not awaken this grass armor soul. Chapter 2. Strange Jade Cauldron Armor Soul. With a soft bang, Zhuowen found that the jade cauldron, which was sitting in his sea of consciousness, suddenly flew out and then expanded to the height of half a person. However, the giant cauldron in front of him was not a physical body, but an illusory soul body. As soon as the giant cauldron appeared, Zhuowen found that the surrounding yuan qi in the room suddenly gathered toward the giant cauldron that was suspended in midair. The air of the heavenly armor continent was filled with rich yuan qi, and armored warriors could absorb the yuan qi in their dantian and transform it into powerful yuan qi. The more powerful the yuan qi in the body, the more powerful the power. After a while, the giant cauldron made a buzzing sound, and Zhuowen was surprised to find that a round elixir shot out of the giant cauldron and into Zhuowen's hand. Then, the giant cauldron shrank again and returned to Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Looking at the inconspicuous thumb-sized elixir in his hand, Zhuowen could feel the rich medicinal properties of the pill. Waves of medicinal fragrance slowly permeated the air. Taking a light breath, Zhuowen suddenly felt refreshed. Zhuowen did not hesitate to swallow the elixir in his hand. Then, Zhuowen felt that his limbs and bones had become much more relaxed and comfortable, and the pain all over his body had also gradually faded away. Turning over and getting up from the bed, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. He did not expect the so-called body-strengthening elixir to be so effective. Originally, his body was seriously injured, and he could barely get out of bed. But now, his injuries had almost healed. Moreover, Zhuowen could feel that the body-strengthening elixir that he had swallowed seemed to be constantly transforming his body, making his originally weak body gradually become much stronger. What a magical elixir! It actually healed most of my injuries in such a short time. Looking deeply at the illusory jade cauldron in his sea of consciousness, Zhuowen knew that this jade cauldron should have become his 8th soul, which was the armor soul. And judging from the situation, this unknown jade cauldron armor soul's ability was very special and powerful. However, what made Zhuowen smile bitterly was that the prerequisite to activate the jade cauldron armor soul's ability seemed to be the exchange of other armor souls. Zhuowen's only armor soul, the grass armor soul, had been used up, and Zhuowen did not have another armor soul to exchange for more elixirs. Time flew, and in a flash, 2 days. These 2 days, the body-strengthening elixir had nourished Zhuowen's body, and Zhuowen's body had unknowingly reached the strength of skin toughening under the effects of the elixir. Under the effects of the body-strengthening pill, I actually made a breakthrough in my realm. Now that my body has recovered, I should go out for a stroll and roughly understand the situation around me. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and strode out of the door. Third young master. Your recovery ability is quite strong. I haven't seen you for a few days, and your injuries are all healed. Just as Zhuowen stepped out of the door, a cold voice suddenly entered Zhuowen's ears. When Zhuowen heard this, his hair stood on end. A faint sense of danger told him that this person did not come with good intentions. He looked at the empty room cautiously and shouted, "Who is pretending to be a ghost? Show yourself if you have the guts." Whoosh! There was the sound of wind breaking, and then Zhuowen realized that his collar had been grabbed by someone. Zhuowen could faintly see a very faint shadow in front of him. This shadow carried him out of the room without saying anything. After about an hour, Zhuowen was brought to a desolate area. This was a wasteland on the outskirts of Rattan Armor City. There was no one living here, and it was hundreds of miles away from the Zhuo family. Even if he killed someone here, there would not be any evidence left. Third young master. I'm just following orders. I hope you don't blame me. Don't worry, I'll kill you with one strike. I won't let you die too painfully. With a bang, Zhuowen was thrown to the ground. Then a faint shadow suddenly appeared in front of Zhuowen. It was a middle-aged man with a gloomy expression. The middle-aged man held a scimitar that radiated cold light. Zhuowen recognized this middle-aged man. In his memory, this middle-aged man was called Guard Jia. He was one of Zhuo Wu's two most valued bodyguards. It was said that he had a stealth armor soul, which could make him completely transparent in the night. This kind of armor soul was very suitable for assassination. Guard Jia could assassinate Zhuowen without anyone noticing. However, he obviously did not guard against Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen had no cultivation at all, while Guard Jia's cultivation had reached the Qi refining realm. The realms of the Heavenly Armor Continent were, the Yin Void Realm, the Yang Corporeal Realm, the Zhao King Realm, the Ultimate Emperor Realm, the Four Venerables Realm, the Imperial Power Realm, the Pilgrimage Realm, the Apotheosis Realm, the Virtual Sky Realm, and the Heaven-Breaking Realm. According to legend, the Heaven-Breaking Realm warriors could break the void, cut off reincarnation, and live forever. Before the Yin Void Realm, there were 10 very important basic realms, which were skin refining, membrane forging, bone forming, blood condensing, Qi refining, divine valor, viscera strengthening, spirit communication, soul change, and nirvana. Only by crossing these basic realms could the heavenly armor warriors be qualified to be the top masters. Did that bastard Zhuo Wu send you? That bastard! I've been demoted to an ordinary disciple, but he still won't let me go. As soon as Zhuowen landed on the ground, he cursed loudly, his face full of indignation. Guard A was startled. He didn't think that Zhuowen would actually not beg for mercy from him. Instead, he started cursing his own master. It had to be said that this third young master, who was about to die, had quite the character. In fact, this was not entirely young Master Zhuo Wu's idea. It was mainly Miss Shuoxinya who encouraged the young master to kill you. After all, your existence still poses a certain threat to the young master. Guard Jia said in a low muffled voice, faintly complaining for his master. It's that bitch Shuoxinya again. Your master is being used by this bitch. Since she can betray me, she can naturally betray your master in the future. Hearing this, Zhuowen was even angrier. Originally, he did not have a good impression of Shuoxinya, but now, he hated this vicious woman even more. This woman not only repaid kindness with ingratitude, but also wanted to kill him. Even if Zhuowen's character was indifferent, he still wanted to kill Shuoxinya. Hearing this, Guard Jia hesitated. In fact, he did not have a good impression of Shuoxinya. Especially when he saw Shuoxinya acting coquettishly in front of his master, he actually despised her very much in his heart. Third young master, you don't have to worry about Shuoxinya. I only know that this time's mission is to kill you, so I'll offend you. Sighing lightly, Guard Jia's eyes flashed with a cold light. Then, the scimitar in his hand suddenly slashed towards Zhuowen's neck. Although Zhuowen tried his best to avoid Guard Jia's slash, the Yuanli that erupted from Guard Jia's body had formed an invisible chain that firmly imprisoned Zhuowen on the spot, making him unable to move at all. Looking at the approaching scimitar, Zhuowen's nerves suddenly tensed up. His mind was filled with unwillingness and irritation. He did not want to die like this. He was very unwilling. Just when the scimitar was an inch away from Zhuowen's neck, a violent dragon roar suddenly came from Zhuowen's body. Then, the dragon-shaped jade pendant hanging on Zhuowen's chest suddenly left Zhuowen's body and turned into a huge golden dragon that flew towards Guard Jia. What is this? Ah! With a miserable cry, Guard Jia spat out a mouthful of blood under the attack of the golden dragon and fell unconscious on the grass more than 10 meters away. What's going on with this jade pendant? Zhuowen looked at the dragon-shaped jade pendant that had turned into a giant dragon in horror, the corners of his mouth trembling slightly. The dragon-shaped jade pendant was left to him by his father, Zhuo Xiaotian, before he went missing. Back then, his father said that the jade pendant was very important and must not be lost. Now, he did not expect that this jade pendant had such a strange ability. But what was the origin of this jade pendant? The golden dragon quietly stared at Zhuowen, then suddenly turned into a valiant middle-aged man. Father! Suddenly, Zhuowen blurted out with a slightly excited expression. The middle-aged man in front of him was his father, Zhuo Xiaotian, who went missing 10 years ago. He was also the #1 genius of the Zhuo family back then. Zhuowen! If you see this illusion that I set up, then it means that your life is in danger. This dragon-shaped jade pendant contains my full strength, it should be enough to help you resolve this danger. You must be very confused about why I left back then. The main reason is that I offended a force that I shouldn't have offended. In order not to implicate the family, I could only leave alone. As for what force it is, you can't know now. Only when you are strong enough will you have the right to know. If you want to know the truth, then work hard to become stronger. That force has already begun to pay attention to the Zhuo family. You have to be careful. The dragon-shaped jade pendant that I left you contains an armor skill called Primeval Dragon Roar Fist. This armor skill is actually incomplete, but its power is still no less than the heaven rank intermediate level. I hope you can grasp it well. The future of the Zhuo family depends on you. Goodbye, my son. The middle-aged man looked at Zhuowen reluctantly, then gradually disappeared into the air. At the same time, the dragon-shaped jade pendant that was suspended in the air suddenly shattered, and turned into a golden light that drilled into Zhuowen's mind. Then, the contents of the armor skill, Primeval Dragon Roar Fist, kept replaying in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen looked at the golden figure that gradually disappeared into the air with a complicated expression. He didn't expect that there was such a complicated story behind his father's departure from the family. However, he was curious about what kind of force his father had offended. Even his father didn't dare to mention the name of this force. Let's not think about this for now. I should think about how to improve my strength first. If it wasn't for father's dragon-shaped jade pendant, I would have been killed by Guard Jia. I, Zhuowen, will definitely take revenge for this. Zhuo Wu and Zhuo Xinya, you two just wait and see. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. Then, he came to Guard Jia's side. After discovering that Guard Jia was completely dead, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, Zhuowen suddenly realized that the Jade Cauldron armor soul in his sea of consciousness had uncontrollably drilled out and turned into a giant cauldron that was half the height of a person, covering Guard Jia's entire body inside. Then, Zhuowen's sharp eyes noticed that a faint shadow emerged from Guard Jia and was absorbed by the giant cauldron. After looking carefully, Zhuowen realized that this faint shadow was actually Guard Jia's armor soul, Stealth. Chapter 3. Continuous breakthroughs. Furthermore, Zhuowen discovered that under the cover of the Jade Cauldron, Guard's body was rapidly shriveling at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while, Guard's originally tall body had shrunk down to Zhuowen's waist. A buzzing sound was emitted from the Jade Cauldron. Zhuowen faintly discovered that after absorbing Guard's Yuan essence, the jade cauldron actually showed signs of growing stronger. South. The jade cauldron once again transformed into the size of a palm and drilled into Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Following which, a blood-red pill suddenly appeared in Zhuowen's palm. This pill had just erupted from the jade cauldron. Blood essence pill, a special pill condensed from the blood essence of a flesh and blood creature. Swallowing this pill will allow the user to obtain a portion of the blood essence's owner's power and special abilities. A special thought was transmitted from the jade cauldron into Zhuowen's mind. Clearly, it was introducing the effects of the red pill to Zhuowen. What a special pill! It can actually allow the user to obtain a portion of the blood essence's owner's power and special abilities. Does this special ability refer to the armor spirit? Zhuowen stroked his chin as he looked at the blood essence pill in his hand with a strange expression. In the end, Zhuowen swallowed the blood essence pill. Once the pill entered his stomach, Zhuowen immediately felt his entire body warm up. Following which, he was shocked to discover that the yuan qi that was originally running amok in his meridians had suddenly calmed down and started to circulate in an orderly manner through his 8 extraordinary meridians before finally converging in his dantian. Boom! Zhuowen only felt a rumbling sound in his mind. Following which, he discovered that a thin layer of yuan qi had unknowingly appeared on his skin. Furthermore, he could clearly feel that his body had become much stronger and was filled with energy. In just a short while, I've consecutively jumped 2 stages to the membrane forging stage. The effects of this blood essence pill are truly unfathomable. Feeling his body brimming with energy, Zhuowen's face instantly lit up. Furthermore, Zhuowen discovered that the chaotic yuan qi in his body had not yet disappeared. It actually continued to flow into his slightly shriveled dantian. As the yuan qi continued to replenish itself, Zhuowen's dantian slowly swelled up like a balloon. At this rate, I'll be able to reach the bone creation stage again. Crackling sounds could be heard from Zhuowen's limbs and bones. Zhuowen could clearly feel that the 108 main bones in his body were undergoing unimaginable changes. Finally, a thunderous sound came from Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's face lit up with joy. He knew that he had reached the bone creation stage. All the bones in his body seemed to have been reborn, becoming as hard as steel. The most obvious change in the bone creation realm was naturally the bones. The bones would no longer be as fragile as before, and instead become as tough as steel. At the same time, the strength in the body would reach 500 kilograms, enough to lift a cauldron. Even in his dreams, Zhuowen would never have thought that in just half an hour, he would actually be able to reach the bone forging realm with reinforced iron bones. If the upper echelons of the clan were to know about this, they would definitely be shocked. The effects of the essence blood pill have not worn off yet. The yuan qi in my body is still flowing into my dantian. Looks like I have hope of breaking through to the blood condensation stage again. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled into a happy smile. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged on the ground and began to methodically guide the yuan power in his body, allowing his powerful dantian to fully absorb this hard-earned yuan power. Time slowly passed. Zhuowen sat on the wasteland with his eyes tightly shut and a serene expression on his face. At the same time, waves of rich yuan qi undulations emerged from Zhuowen's small body, forming a small yuan qi whirlwind. Zhuowen's clothes had long been torn to shreds by the yuan qi whirlwind around his body. At this moment, Zhuowen's upper body was completely bare. Perhaps it was because he had broken through to the bone creation stage, but the originally extremely thin and weak Zhuowen now faintly looked somewhat strong. At this moment, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. Soon after, all the muscles in his body began to tremble. Following the trembling of his muscles, waves of blood-red blood qi actually condensed around Zhuowen's body. At the same time, the surrounding air faintly emitted a pungent smell of blood. Zhuowen twisted his waist and flipped himself up. His right fist carried a monstrous aura as it ferociously punched towards a nearby tree that was as thick as a person. The blood qi that had originally scattered around Zhuowen's body instantly condensed around Zhuowen's fist, causing Zhuowen's fist to faintly appear a bewitching red. With a rumbling sound, the tree that was as thick as a person was instantly turned into fine powder by Zhuowen's punch. Countless wood shavings flew everywhere. Condensing the powerful blood qi in my body to obtain powerful strength. I never thought that I would once again break through to the blood condensation stage. This is truly inconceivable. Zhuowen's eyes emitted a radiant light as he looked at the tree that had already been turned into fine powder. He was full of joy as he laughed heartily. Apart from this, the blood essence pill actually bestowed upon my armor guard a unique stealth armor spirit. Now in my sea of consciousness, there is also the stealth armor spirit other than the Jade Cauldron armor spirit. This blood essence pill is truly miraculous. Zhuowen faintly smiled as he lightly waved his right hand. Suddenly, a faint black shadow appeared beside Zhuowen. Following Zhuowen's instructions, the black shadow attached itself to the surface of Zhuowen's body. Then, Zhuowen's figure gradually disappeared into the night. Of course, the moment the stealth armor spirit appeared, the Jade Cauldron armor spirit naturally popped up a message asking if he wanted to exchange for certain pill formulas. However, Zhuowen directly rejected it. The stealth armor spirit was still very useful to Zhuowen. Naturally, he was unwilling to exchange for pill formulas. I heard that Zhuo Wu's strength has already reached the divine valor stage. Right now, I'm only in the blood condensation stage. I definitely have no chance of winning against Zhuo Wu. However, with this heaven-defying Jade Cauldron armor spirit, I think I'll be able to catch up to Zhuo Wu very quickly. Zhuo Wu and Zhuo Xinya, just wait for my bloody revenge. At this time, the sky was gradually turning white. Zhuowen didn't think that he would unknowingly cultivate for an entire night. However, this night had greatly benefited Zhuowen. It's time to go back. After muttering to himself, Zhuowen's body suddenly turned into a shadow and disappeared from the spot. When he returned to his residence in the outer courtyard, Zhuowen could hear Chun Er's sobbing from afar. At this time, Zhuowen's cultivation had already reached the blood condensation stage. His 5 senses were far superior to ordinary people's. Zhuowen's expression changed and he immediately quickened his steps. When Zhuowen saw Chun Er's petite body blocked at the door by 3 burly men, Zhuowen's eyes immediately spat fire. His body flashed and Zhuowen immediately appeared beside Chun Er. Then, he looked coldly at the 3 burly men in front of him. The 3 burly men were all big and burly. They wore somewhat old linen clothes. With one look, one could tell that they were servants of the family. "Young master. You're finally back. They said that you're already dead and wanted me to go with them. I didn't want to, so they forced me." When Chun Er saw that Zhuowen had returned, she couldn't help but hug Zhuowen tightly and burst into tears. After all, Chun Er was only 11 years old. She was just an immature child. When she saw that 3 strangers wanted to take her away, she was definitely terrified. Now that Zhuowen had returned, she naturally relied on Zhuowen. Patting Chun Er's shoulder lightly, Zhuowen looked coldly at the 3 burly men in front of him and said, "Who sent you? Zhuo Wu or Zhuo Xinya?" "Zhuowen? You're actually not dead?" Master clearly said that she had already persuaded young Master Zhuo Wu to send people to kill you. How are you still alive? The leader of the burly men was abnormally tall. He was a head taller than Zhuowen. At this time, he looked at Zhuowen with an unsightly expression. "Looks like it's that bitch Zhuo Xinya. I really didn't expect that bitch to be so ruthless. I, Zhuowen, will personally make that bitch regret being born into this world one day." At this time, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Zhuo Xinya had targeted him time and time again, which had caused Zhuowen to be filled with disgust and murderous intent. "Although we don't know why a piece of trash like you isn't dead, you're definitely dead. But now, you're dead for sure. If we bring your head to Master, it'll be a great merit for us." The leader of the burly men looked at Zhuowen with a ferocious expression. The corners of his mouth revealed a mocking smile. Obviously, he regarded Zhuowen as a prey. He knew that Zhuowen didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. Killing Zhuowen was not a difficult task for him. Moreover, Zhuowen was no longer the third young master of the Zhuo family. He was just an insignificant ordinary disciple. Even if he died, no one would stand up for Zhuowen. Chun Er. Go back to the house first. I'll look for you later. Zhuowen said gently to Chun Er, who was beside him. Chun Er looked at Zhuowen with some worry. In the end, she obediently entered the house. Turning his head to look at the three burly men, Zhuowen's eyes suddenly became extremely cold. He said coldly, "Today, you won't be leaving. All of you will die." What an arrogant brat! How dare a piece of trash like you speak so arrogantly? The leader of the burly men roared and immediately rushed towards Zhuowen. A huge fist violently greeted Zhuowen. This burly man's cultivation was obviously the highest among the three of them. He had already reached the bone creation stage of reinforced iron bones. However, to the current Zhuowen, it was not even worth mentioning. Zhuowen gently extended a hand and immediately blocked the burly man's fist. No matter how hard the burly man tried, he couldn't move at all. You. The leader of the burly men's face immediately turned red. However, he was shocked to find that he couldn't break free from Zhuowen's palm. At this moment, the burly man looked at the indifferent young man in front of him and suddenly realized how wrong he was. This young man was not as weak as the rumors said. On the contrary, he was actually much stronger than him. You want to take my head with this little strength? What a joke. At this point, a cold light flashed in Zhuowen's eyes. Then, he clenched his right hand. The burly man's right hand was immediately distorted by Zhuowen's huge strength. Before the burly man could cry out, Zhuowen's fist instantly landed on his chest. Chapter 4. The powerful Zhuowen looking at the large man that slowly collapsed at Zhuowen's feet, a trace of fear appeared on the other two men's faces. The leader was much stronger than the two of them, but he was still dealt with by Zhuowen in one move. They knew that even if they joined hands, they wouldn't be a match for Zhuowen. Thus, the two of them didn't even think about it before turning around and running. But how could Zhuowen let them escape? Zhuowen's legs shot out like a cannonball towards the two fleeing men. His body immediately emitted a thick smell of blood. This smell of blood was a sign of the blood condensation realm. If one wanted to use their powerful blood energy, they would definitely emit the smell of blood. Boom! Zhuowen arrived in front of the two men and coldly stared at them. Where do you think you're running to? Third young master, please spare us. We didn't come up with the idea to steal Chun Er. It was that bitch Shuoxinya who ordered us to do so. We're innocent. Seeing that they couldn't escape, the two men hurriedly knelt in front of Zhuowen and begged for mercy. It's too late to beg for mercy now. You can go in peace. Zhuowen didn't pay any attention to their begging. Instead, he waved his hands and the two men let out miserable shrieks before turning into two corpses. This was the first time Zhuowen had killed someone, but Zhuowen didn't feel the slightest bit uncomfortable. Instead, he felt a bit excited. After summoning the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, the three corpses immediately turned into three bright red blood essence pills under the effect of the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul. Zhuowen unceremoniously swallowed the three blood essence pills. However, the three blood essence pills didn't have much effect on Zhuowen. They only increased his yuanli by a bit. Zhuowen knew that this was probably because the strength of the three burly men was too low. If there was a Qi Refinement Realm warrior who could refine a blood essence pill, Zhuowen would definitely be able to break through again. Now, Zhuowu and Shuoxinya were both thinking of ways to kill him. Even though his status was no longer a threat to them, they still wouldn't let him off the hook. Zhuowen felt that he was in a bad situation. Zhuowen knew that in the eyes of Zhuowu and Shuoxinya, only the dead were worthy of their trust. Strength. I need to increase my strength as soon as possible. Since it's hard to improve my cultivation now, I'll practice the primordial dragon roar fist that my father left me. The armor skill was a skill that could release powerful energy in conjunction with the armor soul of the body. At the same time, it was the foundation of the armor warrior. It could be said that an armor warrior without the armor skill was like a tiger without claws and fangs. There was no threat at all. This showed the importance of the armor skill to the armor warrior. Armor skills were divided into 8 levels: mortal, human, earth, heaven, emperor, saint, and god. Each level was further divided into 3 sublevels: upper, middle, and lower. The armor skill that Zhuo Xiaotian left for Zhuowen was at the middle heaven rank. Even the highest level armor skill in the Zhuowen family was only at the middle earth rank. It was a whole level lower than the primordial dragon roar fist. Moreover, the primordial dragon roar fist was only incomplete. If it was complete, who knew what level this armor skill would be at? After returning to the room, Chun-Er saw that Zhuowen had returned safe and sound. Naturally, she was very happy. After chatting with Chun-Er for a while, Zhuowen went to his room alone to study the primordial dragon roar fist. Just now, Zhuowen roughly looked at it. He found that the primordial dragon roar fist was divided into 3 levels: first dragon roar, 10 dragon roar, and 100 dragon roar. Zhuowen knew that as long as he could reach the first dragon roar, he would have the strength of 1 dragon in his body. At that time, his combat strength would definitely increase by several times. Thinking of this, Zhuowen began to meditate in his room to study the essence of the primordial dragon roar fist. Zhuo family, inside the concentrated fragrance pavilion. Guard B, it's been a night. Is Garda still not back? A young man with a slightly sickly pale face came out from the inner room. He tidied up his somewhat messy clothes and asked the other guard outside the door with a flushed face. The young man's name was Zhuo Wu. He was Zhuowen's cousin. However, his relationship with Zhuowen had never been harmonious. Following behind Zhuo Wu was the blushing Zhuo Xinya. Zhuo Xinya had the unique charm of a mature woman. Moreover, every movement of hers revealed a trace of charm, causing men to involuntarily focus their gazes on this enchanting woman. No one would have thought that such a charming and beautiful woman's heart was filled with ruthlessness and ambition. At this moment, Zhuo Xinya's beautiful eyes were like silk as she foolishly looked at Zhuo Wu's broad back. However, Zhuo Xinya's walking posture was a little strange. She walked with a limp. Looking at the strange walking posture of Zhuo Xinya, Guard B's eyes revealed a trace of ambiguity. He immediately bowed and said, "Indeed, he hasn't returned yet." Young master should also know Guard A's character. At this moment, perhaps this fellow is already enjoying himself somewhere? At this moment, Zhuo Wu's mood was very good. He didn't pursue the matter of Guard A's absence. However, looking at the strange walking posture of Zhuo Xinya, Zhuo Wu's mouth revealed a trace of pride. Zhuo Wu also didn't expect Zhuo Xinya to still be a virgin after living in Zhuowen's concentrated fragrance pavilion for 2 years. If he didn't find the bloodstains under the sheets when he took her last night, Zhuo Wu wouldn't have believed it. It was precisely because of this discovery that Zhuo Wu was very excited. He took Zhuo Xinya 4 or 5 times last night. This was also the reason why Zhuo Xinya's walking posture was so strange. Garda helped this young master get rid of a big problem. It's only right for me to go out and relax. Zhuo Wu said with a laugh. Young master. You promised me. Guard B's eyes suddenly carried a trace of lust as he looked at Zhuo Xinya, who was walking with difficulty. Zhuo Wu coldly looked at Zhuo Xinya, who was walking towards him step by step. He sneered and said, "You've been with this young master for so long. Of course, this young master won't let you suffer a loss. This young master is already tired of playing with this woman. Go ahead and enjoy her. But after playing with her, you should know what to do." Zhuo Wu and Guard B's conversation didn't avoid Zhuo Xinya. Originally, Zhuo Xinya wanted to follow Zhuo Wu with a flushed face. However, when she heard the conversation between Zhuo Wu and Guard B, her face suddenly became incomparably pale. Young Master Zhuo Wu, what do you mean by this? I'm already your woman. Zhuo Xinya asked with a trembling voice. There was a trace of a forced smile on her face. In fact, she already faintly understood the meaning of Zhuo Wu's words. Moreover, Guard B's eyes were currently sweeping over her body without any restraint. Her heart was filled with an ominous premonition. I can only say that you're really a stupid woman. Do you really think this young master will take you in? The promise I made to you was just to use you. This young master only wanted that trash Zhuowen to taste the feeling of being betrayed by someone he trusted. Now that Zhuowen is dead, you're naturally useless. Zhuo Wu laughed coldly. Then, he no longer paid any attention to the pale-faced Zhuo Xinya and strode out of concentrated fragrance pavilion. Chapter 5. Vengeance from Zhaoan. The curtain of night gradually descended, like a raging black dragon shrouding the entire land. The bright moonlight was also gradually covered by thick black clouds. In the dark room, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, his lips curling into a cold smile as he muttered, "Zhuo Wu. Just you wait, tonight I will make you regret yesterday's assassination attempt." My, Zhuowen's, life is not so easy to take. Zhuowen leaped up, followed by the sound of a dragon's roar from Zhuowen's body. Then, a faint dragon-shaped aura slowly formed around Zhuowen's body. The heaven-mixing dragon roar fist is divided into 3 stages: first dragon's roar, 10 dragons roar, and 100 dragons roar. I only used 1 day to reach the level of first dragon's roar. Now that I have the strength of 1 dragon in my body, I can even fight against a chi refining stage warrior. Zhuowen's lips curled into a smile, his body exuding a strong sense of confidence. Zhuowen stared coldly in the direction of the inner courtyard's concentrated fragrance pavilion, muttering to himself, "I will take back what belongs to me, you just wait and see." After saying that, an illusory shadow suddenly emerged from Zhuowen's body, then covered Zhuowen's entire body. In the night, it was as if Zhuowen had disappeared in an instant. It was the stealth-armored soul that Zhuowen had devoured from Guard Zhuo family, concentrated fragrance pavilion. Zhuo Xinya's clothes were messy, her pair of jade-like hands were timidly tugging at the quilt on the bed. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at Guard B, who was tidying up his clothes. "Bitch! How dare you look at me like that?" Guard B also noticed the hatred in Zhuo Xinya's eyes, and he angrily slapped Zhuo Xinya. A clear palm print suddenly appeared on Zhuo Xinya's face, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. "You must be regretting abandoning Zhuo Wen. He, the once glorious 3rd young master of the Zhuo family, is now a corpse in the wilderness. Even if you follow Zhuowen, you will only end up dead. Today, I've let you have a taste of the wonderful feeling between a man and a woman. You can die without regrets." As he spoke, Guard B took out a dagger from behind his heel. The cold light of the dagger immediately shot into Zhuo Xinya's face, reflecting the fear on her face. "It's really a pity to kill a beauty like you. However, young Master Zhuo Wu's orders are not something a guard like me can disobey, so you must die." Guard B slowly walked towards Zhuo Xinya with a cold smile on his face. "I really regret my choice that day. If I had chosen Zhuowen, even if I died, I would have died with dignity. Unlike now, after being played by others, I'm dying without any dignity." A line of clear tears fell from Zhuo Xinya's eyes. Her face was full of regret and sadness. She knew that Zhuo Wu would not let her live in this world. Now, she was useless to Zhuo Wu. From the beginning, she was only a pawn of Zhuo Wu. It was laughable that she thought herself clever and tried every means to please Zhuo Wu. She even targeted Zhuowen at all costs to win Zhuo Wu's favor. At this moment, Guard B, who was approaching Zhuo Xinya step by step, suddenly had a change in expression. He shouted and leaned to the right. At the same time, a dagger suddenly appeared at the place where he was just standing. "Who is it?" Guard B leaped and turned around to look at the door with a vigilant expression. However, he did not find any trace of the person. The dagger that was originally there had also mysteriously disappeared. "Who is it that's playing tricks? Hurry up and come out." "Humph. No matter who you are, don't even think about leaving here alive today." With that, Guard B roared, and a faint sword shadow flew out from his mind. Guard B formed a seal with both hands, and the sword shadow above his head split into 10 identical sword shadows. The 10 sword shadows revolved around Guard B's body, while Guard B vigilantly observed his surroundings. Guard B's armor soul was the sword shadow. This kind of armor soul could split into more sword shadows as the host's strength grew stronger. It was a typical armor soul that could deal damage to groups of people. However, its power was much weaker. This was the weakness of the sword shadow. Ambush from 10 sides. Guard B roared, and the 10 sword shadows surrounding him suddenly turned into 10 sword lights and flew in all directions. However, to Guard B's disappointment, the 10 sword lights did not hit any target. Are all the guards around Zhuowu so vulgar? A sarcastic voice suddenly sounded, and then a faint figure gradually appeared at the door. You are Zhuowen? That's impossible. Weren't you killed by Guard A? Where is Guard A now? Guard B looked at Zhuowen, who appeared in front of him in disbelief, and said in horror. When Zhuoxinya, who was lying on the bed, saw Zhuowen, her pretty face suddenly brightened up. Her originally ashen face was suddenly filled with hope. You can rest assured. I will send you to see Guard A soon. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up into a sneer. Then, he leaped up and turned into a blur as he shot towards Guard B. Although I don't know how you escaped, since you've come here to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Guard B said with a sinister smile when he saw that Zhuowen had overestimated himself and made the first move. Guard A raised both his hands, and the 10 sword shadows around him immediately turned into sword light and shot straight at Zhuowen. The air was immediately filled with a cold light. Zhuowen let out a cold snort. Surprisingly, he did not dodge the attack. Instead, all of his muscles tensed up. Then, a loud dragon's roar rang out from his body. Zhuowen's hands formed the shape of a dragon and hit the 10 sword shadows in front of him like a dragon swallowing a pearl. Boom! A massive aura immediately swirled around Zhuowen's body. Next, a massive dragon formed purely from the aura swirled above Zhuowen's head. The massive dragon growled and instantly blocked Guard B's 10 sword silhouettes. Heaven mixing dragon roar fist. A low shout rang out from Zhuowen's mouth. After that, Zhuowen clenched his fists tightly and slammed them fiercely against the 10 sword silhouettes. With a cracking sound, the 10 sword silhouettes were instantly obliterated by Zhuowen's fists. Guard B's face turned pale and he took a dozen steps back. He involuntarily spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and said, "How is this possible? How can a piece of trash like you have such powerful strength?" At this time, Zhuowen's body moved without wind. The huge dragon formed by the aura kneeled beside Zhuowen. It made Zhuowen look very powerful, like an ancient powerhouse. Trash? You can't even take one move from me. What right do you have to call me trash? Zhuowen waved his right hand and the huge dragon aura pressed down on Guard B. Under the pressure of the huge dragon, Guard B's legs trembled and he knelt down with a plop. Now you can die. Zhuowen's right hand transformed from a palm into a claw and fiercely stabbed towards the space between Guard B's brows. Powerful origin energy instantly minced Guard B's sea of consciousness like a meat grinder, and Guard B didn't even make a sound before he fell to the ground and died. Zhuowen then pointed at his forehead. The jade cauldron armor in his sea of consciousness turned into a huge cauldron that was half the size of a person and covered Guard B's body. Soon, all the blood essence in Guard B's body was absorbed by the jade cauldron. In the end, it turned into a bright red blood essence pill that fell into Zhuowen's hand. Zhuowen could clearly feel that the quality of the blood essence pill in his hand was much higher than the previous ones. Clearly, Guard B's strength should be stronger than Guard A's, and the quality of the blood essence pill he made was much better. The blood essence pill is in my hand. Swallowing this blood essence pill should be able to help me break through a few levels. Now let's find a place to refine it first. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he looked at the blood essence pill in his hand. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, Zhuowen suddenly felt his right leg being grabbed by someone. Then, Zhuowen looked coldly at Zhuoxinya, who was grabbing his right leg. Zhuowen! Take me with you. I can help you deal with Zhuowu. Moreover, I know Zhuowu very well. As long as you take me with you and give me a certain status again, then with my help, Zhuowu will definitely not be your opponent. Zhuo Xinya's expression was rather calm at this moment. She looked straight at Zhuowen and said with confidence. After all, Zhuo Xinya used to be the housekeeper of the concentrated fragrance pavilion. She had a certain understanding of Zhuowen's character and hobbies. She knew that Zhuowen was a person who valued relationships and was indecisive. Moreover, her suggestion was very reasonable. Zhuo Xinya believed that Zhuowen would definitely accept her suggestion. However, the previous Zhuowen had died long ago. Now, there was another soul in Zhuowen's body. He was no longer the indecisive Zhuowen of the past. Zhuowen kicked Zhuo Xinya's hands away with a cold gaze. This Zhuo Xinya really thought that Zhuowen was a fool. Moreover, this woman in front of him was really shameless to the extreme. She had just instigated Zhuowu to assassinate Zhuowen yesterday. Today, seeing that Zhuowu had abandoned her, she actually wanted to seek protection from Zhuowen. Moreover, there was no trace of guilt on her face. In fact, she even had a natural expression. Zhuowen had to admit that this woman in front of him was really big-breasted but brainless. He really didn't know why Zhuowen had taken in such a woman to be his housekeeper. His right hand suddenly grabbed Zhuo Xinya's neck as if he was holding a little chicken. Zhuowen looked at the beautiful woman in front of him coldly and said, "Do you really think that I'm a fool? Do you think that I don't know what you've been doing behind my back? You instigated Zhuowu to assassinate me, humiliated me in front of everyone in the concentrated fragrance pavilion, and even didn't let my maid, Chun, off. Do you really think that I don't know anything about these things?" Zhuo Xinya didn't expect that Zhuowen would suddenly grab her neck. Her originally calm face suddenly revealed a trace of panic. When she heard Zhuowen's various deeds, Zhuo Xinya's face suddenly turned pale. She had always thought that the things she had done were very secretive. She didn't expect that Zhuowen actually knew about them. "Young Master Zhuowen! Don't kill me. I didn't do these things willingly. Zhuowu must be slandering me. Seeing that I've done my best for the concentrated fragrance pavilion these past few years, please let me go." Zhuo Xinya finally felt the killing intent in the depths of Zhuowen's eyes. At this moment, this beautiful woman finally felt fear towards this trash of a young master that she had always looked down on. "Killing you will only dirty my hands. Wait until this young master reclaims his position. You will be demoted back to the outer court. Don't even think about entering the inner court in the future." Chapter 6. Another breakthrough, Divine Valor Realm. This time, Zhuowen directly returned to the outer courtyard house that the Zhuo family had arranged for Zhuowen. It had to be said that the outer courtyard house was really dilapidated. Moreover, whether it was intentional or not, the outer courtyard house that the family had arranged for Zhuowen was even more dilapidated than the other houses. There were even many holes in the roof of the house. If it was raining, it would not be able to block much of the rain. Looks like there are already many family members who want to see me make a fool of myself. Even this house was arranged in the worst condition on purpose. However, things are different now. Soon, I will take back what belongs to me, Zhuowen. After entering the house, Zhuowen discovered that Chun had already fallen asleep. Therefore, he did not disturb her. Instead, he climbed to the roof and sat cross-legged to calm his restless heart. When his heart was as calm as still water, Zhuowen waved his right hand and took out the blood essence pill that he had just obtained. Without any hesitation, he swallowed the blood essence pill. After that, Zhuowen felt his entire body heat up. A huge amount of elemental energy immediately filled Zhuowen's limbs and bones. Without any delay, Zhuowen sat cross-legged and focused on refining the elemental energy in his body. As time passed, the aura on Zhuowen's body became more and more vigorous. It was as if there was an ancient beast hidden in his body. With a rumbling sound, a whirlwind of elemental energy suddenly appeared around Zhuowen's body. After that, a crackling sound could be heard from Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen could clearly feel that the dantian in his lower abdomen was gradually undergoing earth-shattering changes. After that, the dense elemental energy in Zhuowen's dantian actually gathered into a cyclone. The cyclone spun non-stop as soon as it formed. As the cyclone spun, Zhuowen could feel that the elemental energy in the surrounding air was being sucked into the cyclone in his dantian. Then, the elemental energy was transformed into surging elemental energy under the effect of the cyclone. As expected, I successfully entered the Qi refining realm. There is still a lot of elemental energy in my body. Let's see if I can break through to the divine valor realm. Zhuowen's eyes glowed. Then, he absorbed the essence of the blood essence pill like a whale sucking in water. The hallmark of the Qi refinement realm was that there would be an endless cyclone in the dantian. This cyclone could absorb the essence Qi in the air into the body and convert it into essence Qi. The hallmark of the divine valor realm was the transformation of the cyclone in the dantian into a whirlpool. The suction of this whirlpool was much stronger than the cyclone, which was why the yuanli of the divine valor realm was much higher than the yuanli of the Qi refining realm. At this time, Zhuowen was like a madman, constantly absorbing the essence from the blood essence pills, trying to use the essence to transform the cyclone in his dantian into a vortex. You must succeed. I'm going all out. Zhuowen's face revealed a ferocious expression. He once again fiercely absorbed a large amount of profound qi from the blood essence pill. He actually absorbed all the remaining profound qi from the blood essence pill into his dantian. The huge amount of profound qi rushed into Zhuowen's dantian like a river. At this time, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with pain. Obviously, he was enduring a great deal of pain. Forcefully transforming the dantian like Zhuowen was taking a huge risk, and he would also have to endure a great deal of pain. I must get through this. At this time, Zhuowen felt as if his meridians were being gnawed by 10,000 ants. This kind of heart-wrenching pain made Zhuowen want to scream to the sky. However, Zhuowen did not do so. He just bit his hand hard and endured this inhumane pain alone. The great pain had already made Zhuowen's consciousness blurry. At this time, Zhuowen's face was very pale, and large beads of sweat dripped down from his forehead. Break for me. A beast-like roar came from the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. Then, an extremely powerful aura suddenly emerged from Zhuowen's body. At the same time, the surrounding yuan qi rushed into Zhuowen's body at a shocking speed. Roar! A deep dragon roar suddenly came from Zhuowen's body. Then, two huge dragon auras respectfully knelt beside Zhuowen. Slowly opening his eyes, Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He said to himself excitedly, I've broken through to the divine valor realm, ha! I didn't expect to succeed. And through the effect of the blood essence pill, I also obtained the armor soul, sword shadow from guard B. This kind of AoE armor soul is good stuff. With that, Zhuowen suddenly waved his right hand. The sword shadow armor soul hidden in his sea of consciousness suddenly flew out and split into 10 black swords around Zhuowen. Ambush from 10 sides. Zhuowen roared. The 10 sharp sword shadows surrounding Zhuowen suddenly whistled in all directions. One of the sword shadows shot into a rock that was as tall as a person. This seemingly indestructible rock immediately shattered into pieces. Ambush from 10 sides was the soul skill of the armor soul sword shadow. This soul skill and armor soul skill were very different. Soul skills were contained in the innate armor soul, while armor soul skills were cultivated. Soul skills could continuously evolve as the host's strength increased. Armor soul skills didn't have this characteristic. The higher the quality of the armor soul, the stronger the soul skill. Obviously, Zhuowen was very satisfied with the power of ambush from 10 sides. Zhuowen made a rough estimate and found that each sword shadow had the power of a Qi refinement realm expert's full strength attack. Moreover, Zhuowen could vaguely feel that the sword shadow armor soul was extraordinary. Zhuowen knew that when his cultivation reached the spirit detecting realm, his armor soul would evolve again. At that time, the sword shadow armor soul might evolve as well. In fact, what Zhuowen looked forward to the most was the strange jade cauldron armor soul in his sea of consciousness. Zhuowen could feel that the Jade Cauldron armor soul was definitely not simple. Zhuowen had never heard of an armor soul that could create a heaven-defying pill like the Blood Essence pill. Zhuowen didn't know what level the Jade Cauldron armor soul would reach if it evolved further. At the same time, Zhuowen also noticed that his body was filled with powerful strength. It was as if an ancient giant beast was hidden in his body. The two giant dragons kneeled beside Zhuowen as if they were worshipping him, causing Zhuowen's body to be filled with a powerful aura. Zhuowen flipped over and stood up. His fists were like a storm as he continuously punched forward. Only two dragon roars could be heard. Then, the elemental energy in Zhuowen's body suddenly poured out and turned into two giant dragons around his body. I also have a new breakthrough in the heaven-mixing dragon roar fist. Now, my body is filled with strength. Now, I should have the strength of two dragons in my body. Zhuowen's face was unusually excited. His fists were constantly waving, and the two giant dragons suddenly danced around Zhuowen. It was a spectacular sight. Just as Zhuowen was immersed in the joy of a breakthrough, an ominous premonition suddenly crept into his heart. In his perception, there seemed to be many powerful auras flying towards him. Zhuowen's face darkened. He flipped over and landed on the ground. He saw that it was pitch black outside, and the cold moonlight hung high above his head. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp. He could see that there were many black shadows flashing in the depths of the night. Looking at the movements of these black shadows, Zhuowen could see that their destination was obviously him. Whoosh! 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 More than a dozen vigorous figures suddenly landed not far away from Zhuowen. The person in the lead was carrying a person in his hand as if he was carrying a little piglet. Zhuowen's pupils shrank because he found that the vitality around these figures was stirring. They were all in the qi refining realm. Zhuowen's face suddenly became a lot more serious. Zhuowen, I didn't expect you to hide so deeply. You actually killed two of my capable guards. It seems that I have underestimated you. The person in the lead was the tall Zhuowu. The person in Zhuowu's hand was actually the petite Zhuoxinya. At this time, Zhuoxinya's face was numb, and she allowed Zhuowu to carry her without any resistance. However, when Zhuoxinya saw Zhuowen in front of her, a crazy look suddenly appeared on her face. She even looked at Zhuowen with some resentment and screamed, "Zhuowen! Since you don't want to take me away, I won't let you have it easy. You didn't expect me to leak information to Zhuowu, did you? If you had killed me back then, Zhuowu might not have found out about you. Now, you're dead. TSK. Zhuowen, since you can cultivate it, it means that you have a soul armor on you. Although I don't know how you got it, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that I, Zhuowu, won't let you get away with it. I guess you're going to the martial arts arena to prove that you have the armor soul in your body, right? But now, I won't give you the chance." Zhuowu's face was full of self-satisfaction. He even looked at Zhuowen with some pity in his eyes. Does it feel bad to be betrayed twice by someone you trusted? But it doesn't matter. Today, I'll send you to hell together. Zhuowen's face was full of calmness. He looked indifferently at the crazy Zhuoxinya and said, "I've already drawn the line with this bitch. Now, I have nothing to do with this bitch. And you openly used the power of the family to kill me. Aren't you afraid that the family head will punish you according to the family rules? Zhuowen, you're really naive. You must know that you're just an ordinary disciple now. Do you think that the family head will punish me for killing an ordinary disciple? Even if he does, he'll just say a few words. Today, you're dead." Zhuowu looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. Then, he casually threw Zhuoxinya aside with his right hand and said with a cold look, "Go. Today, I'm going to kill him." "Yes. Young Master Zhuowu." More than 10 masked men in black said respectfully to Zhuowen in unison. Then, they turned into more than 10 black shadows and rushed towards Zhuowen. The wide blades in their hands were emitting a chilling aura. Chapter 7. Bloody massacre. More than a dozen cold blade lights streaked across the night sky, all of them heading towards Zhuo Wen's location. A strange smile appeared on the corner of Zhuo Wen's mouth. After that, he actually disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Moreover, the dozen or so cold blade lights had struck nothing but air. Where is he? Why is he gone? Looking at the empty spot, the dozen or so masked black-clothed men who were originally aggressive were all stunned for a moment. Then, their eyes revealed a doubtful expression. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out. A black-clothed man at the very back stared in disbelief at his chest that had been pierced through by a broadsword. His face was filled with disbelief and doubt. He didn't know when his broadsword had appeared in Zhuo Wen's hand. Zhuo Wen stood behind the black-clothed man with a cold gaze. Puchi. Zhuo Wen exerted a little force. The man in black in front of him suddenly screamed in pain. Then, his whole body was split into two. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. When the other men in black saw their comrade being cruelly killed by Zhuo Wen, their eyes were filled with anger. Once again, they rushed towards Zhuo Wen and instantly surrounded Zhuo Wen. However, to their horror, Zhuo Wen had actually disappeared right before their eyes. Soon after, the miserable shriek of another black-clothed man was heard. Naturally, that black-clothed man had unfortunately died as well. The dark night sky could display the greatest power of the stealth-armored soul. At this moment, Zhuo Wen was like a fish in water under the cover of the night sky. What's going on? Why did Zhuo Wen suddenly disappear? What kind of ability is that? The leader of the men in black said with trembling hands. Originally, the leader of the men in black didn't care about Zhuo Wen at all. Because he owed Zhuo Wen's father, Zhuo Dingtian, a favor, he agreed to help Zhuo Wu get rid of Zhuo Wen. However, he didn't expect that Zhuo Wen didn't seem to have no cultivation at all like the rumors said. With just this slight delay, another two of his subordinates had died. Originally, there were more than a dozen black-clothed men on the battlefield, but now, only 8 or 9 of them were left. Moreover, the remaining black-clothed men had long been scared out of their wits by Zhuo Wen's strange ability to come and go without a trace. Many of them had actually begun to shrink back. Zhuo Wen, who was standing at the side and watching the show, also didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, Zhuo Wen would instantly kill 4 men in black. One must know that these men in black were basically at the Qi refining realm. Moreover, their leader was at the divine valor realm like him. However, with such a group of people ganging up on Zhuo Wen, not only were they unable to kill Zhuo Wen, they even lost 4 men in black. Why does Zhuo Wen's armor soul look so much like Guard Jia's stealth armor soul? Zhuo Wu frowned at this moment, and there was a trace of uncertainty in his eyes. The killing continued. Every time Zhuo Wen appeared in the field of vision of the men in black, he would reveal a strange smile. After harvesting a head, he would disappear again. Shrill screams sounded eerie and strange in the night. In the end, Zhuo Wen dealt with the dozen or so black-clothed men, leaving only the leader of the black-clothed men, who was the strongest of them all. At this moment, the ground where Zhuo Wen stood was littered with the corpses of the men in black. The blood that flowed out almost gathered into a small stream under Zhuo Wen's feet, and the messy internal organs were scattered to the side. At this moment, it was as if the ground under Zhuo Wen's feet had turned into a bloody scene. This was the first time Zhuo Wu had seen such a bloody scene in his life. After all, Zhuo Wu was the young master of a dignified family. He had been spoiled since young, so he had never experienced such a cruel scene. At this moment, Zhuo Wu's face was pale as he looked at Zhuo Wen, who was drenched in blood. He couldn't imagine that the person in front of him was actually the trash of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Wen, who he used to bully as he pleased. Is this still the trash of the young master Zhuo Wen from before? When Zhuo Xinya, who had been thrown aside by Zhuo Wu, saw such a bloody scene, she felt nauseous and vomited. She looked at Zhuo Wen with fear in her eyes. She suddenly regretted telling Zhuo Wu. With the strength that Zhuo Wen had displayed, she knew that Zhuo Wen was definitely stronger than Zhuo Wu. When she thought of the consequences of being caught and killed by Zhuo Wen, Zhuo Xinya's face was filled with fear. She screamed, "He's a demon, he's a devil." After killing more than a dozen black-clothed men in an instant, Zhuo Wen's eyes gradually became bloodshot. He didn't know why, but when he saw these people drinking blood under his hands, Zhuo Wen's heart was filled with excitement. Zhuo Wen began to like the feeling of controlling the life and death of others. Zhuo Wen, if you have the guts, fight me fair and square. What kind of man are you to sneak around and attack us like this? The only remaining black-clothed man looked at Zhuo Wen with a ferocious expression. The subordinates he had brought with him had all been killed by Zhuo Wen. One must know that they were subordinates that he had nurtured for so many years, and they were extremely loyal to him. Now that they were all gone, how could the leader of the black-clothed men not be enraged? Zhuo Wen smiled and said faintly, "If you want to fight with me, I'll keep you company." The leader of the men in black was stunned. He didn't expect that the young man in front of him would actually agree to his words in a moment of anger. His face immediately showed an ecstatic expression. Hee. This is what you said. Don't regret it. The leader of the men in black laughed and then roared in a low voice. A black mist suddenly emerged from the leader of the men in black's body. Then, the black mist immediately wrapped around the broadsword in the leader's hand. Then, Zhuo Wen was surprised to find that the originally huge broadsword had grown twice its original size. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed. He knew that the black mist just now should be the leader's armor soul. Obviously, this armor soul had the ability to increase the power of weapons. Looking at the black broadsword in the leader's hand that was as big as him, Zhuo Wen didn't dare to be careless. The reason why Zhuo Wen accepted the leader's angry words just now was actually to test the level of his true combat strength at this time. Zhuo Wen, who was originally a little afraid, immediately showed a relieved smile when he found that Zhuo Wen was actually willing to fight the leader of the men in black. At the same time, there was a sneer in the depths of his eyes. I really don't know what's wrong with this idiot Zhuo Wen's head. He actually agreed to fight Uncle Chang head-on. Although Uncle Chang's cultivation is only at the Divine Valor realm, his armor soul can increase the power of the weapon in his hand by 2 times. Uncle Chang with his giant armor soul can be considered one of the best in the Divine Valor realm. Even I am no match for him. Kid! Die! I want you to pay the price for killing all my men. Holding the black broadsword that was as tall as a person, the leader of the men in black shouted loudly. His entire body turned into an afterimage as he slashed down at Zhuo Wen. At this moment, Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed and his expression became slightly serious. Zhuo Wen's arm muscles tightened and a series of crackling sounds slowly came from Zhuo Wen's body. Then, Zhuo Wen fiercely swung his fist at the leader of the men in black who was rushing towards him. Primeval Dragon Roar Fist, Second Dragon Roar. Boom! A loud dragon roar suddenly rang out. Then, Zhuo Wen's aura rose steadily until it reached its peak. 2 golden dragons suddenly appeared above Zhuo Wen's head. A surging pressure suddenly appeared on the scene. Even Zhuo Wen couldn't help but tremble and almost lose his balance. The 2 dragons fiercely collided with the black broadsword in the leader's hand. Then, the leader was shocked to find that the originally indestructible black broadsword in his hand instantly cracked inch by inch. Then, an extremely powerful force suddenly spread throughout the leader's body. Pooh! The leader of the men in black suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his entire body fell to the ground like a withered leaf. He screamed in pain and died. Seeing that the leader of the men in black was killed in an instant, Zhuo Wen's face was filled with astonishment. He didn't expect the power of the Primeval Dragon Roar Fist to be so terrifying. Just by practicing the second Dragon Roar, he could defeat a Divine Valor Realm armored warrior in one move. Zhuo Wen glanced coldly at the corpses of the men in black. Then, he summoned the Jade Cauldron Armor Spirit. The Jade Cauldron Armor Spirit refined the bodies of the men in black into blood essence pills and kept them. Among the men in black, only the leader had an armor soul. Therefore, the blood essence pills refined by the Jade Cauldron had the strongest aura. This guy actually fought Uncle Chang head-on. Not only did he not lose, he even killed Uncle Chang in one move. What's going on? When did Zhuo Wen become so powerful? I remember that a few days ago, Zhuowen didn't have any cultivation at all. Now, his cultivation has actually reached the divine valor realm. At this moment, fear finally appeared on Zhuo Wu's face. When he saw Zhuowen looking at him coldly, the fear in his eyes grew even stronger. He actually turned around and ran for his life without looking back. Do you think you can escape? Zhuowen sneered. Then, he jumped up and chased after Zhuo Wu like an agile monkey. Zhuowen gently waved his fists. Suddenly, a dragon's roar was heard. A giant golden dragon suddenly condensed in the air and suddenly pounced on Zhuo Wu. Looking at the approaching giant golden dragon, Zhuo Wu's face showed a trace of determination. Then, he shouted. Zhuo Wu's body suddenly began to turn into stone. Soon, Zhuo Wu turned into a stone man. His entire body was gray like granite. Zhuo Wu's armor soul was the rock armor soul. This kind of armor soul focused on defense. It could cover one's entire body with hard rocks, increasing one's defense by several times. Boom! The giant golden dragon slammed into Zhuo Wu. Then, Zhuo Wu screamed and fell to the ground. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. When he landed on the ground, Zhuowen suddenly lifted Zhuo Wu up. He stared at Zhuo Wu with his sharp eyes and said, "Zhuo Wu, I said that if I ever have the chance to turn the tables, I will definitely return the humiliation you have inflicted on me double." Chapter 8. Three Dragons Roar. Zhuowen grabbed Zhuo Wu's neck with one hand and said coldly, "With the talent I've shown so far, do you think I won't be able to get these things from the family? However, I won't kill you now because you're still useful to me." When Zhuo Wu heard this, he felt relieved. In fact, he was most afraid that Zhuowen would kill him in a fit of anger. If that happened, he would die in vain. As long as he didn't die, he still had a chance to escape from Zhuowen's hands. "Zhuowen, if I don't die this time, I'll ask my father to kill you personally," Zhuo Wu thought resentfully. Just as Zhuo Wu was scheming, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. "You destroyed my dantian." Zhuo Wu looked at the cold-faced Zhuowen in horror. He clutched his abdomen with both hands and his entire body trembled. Crippling your dantian was only the interest. If it wasn't for the fact that you still had some use, you would have died long ago. Zhuowen's lips curled into a cold smile. Not far away, Zhuoxinya saw more than 10 Qi refining stage black-clothed men being taken care of by Zhuowen in an instant. Even Zhuo Wu, who was in the divine valor stage, was defeated in a single move. Zhuoxinya finally understood how powerful the master she had betrayed was. Zhuoxinya knew that after tonight, the young man in front of her would regain his position in the family. His position might even be higher than before. Wealth and luxury would be at his fingertips. She knew that if she didn't escape now, her fate wouldn't be any better than Zhuo Wu, who was in Zhuowen's hands. "Zhuoxinya, where do you think you're going?" Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and stared at Zhuoxinya, who was about to slip away. His figure flashed and stood in front of Zhuoxinya. "Zhuowen, I've wronged you in the past. I only beg you not to kill me. Please let me go." Zhuoxinya's gaze was timid and her legs were weak. She actually knelt before Zhuowen and trembled. Her beautiful face was full of pleading. Zhuowen straightened his back, and a deep dragon roar could be faintly heard from his body. A huge pressure immediately enveloped Zhuoxinya. Zhuoxinya stole a glance at the dignified Zhuowen. In the past 2 years when she was with Zhuowen in Concentrated Fragrance Pavilion, she had never felt such a strong aura and domineering aura. In the past, Zhuowen had always been cultured and refined, with a strong scholarly aura. Compared to the current Zhuowen, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. If Zhuowen was just a weak scholar in the past, the current Zhuowen seemed to have an ancient dragon hidden in his body. Just his aura alone was enough to make others not dare to look directly at him. He. Zhuoxinya, it's too late to say anything now. I've already given you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Now, you can die. As Zhuowen spoke, he pinched Zhuoxinya's white neck. With a gentle squeeze, Zhuoxinya's eyes rolled back and she stopped breathing. Looking at the dead Zhuoxinya, Zhuowen's expression was very complicated. In fact, Zhuowen and this woman didn't have much of a grudge. However, this woman didn't know what was good for her and insisted on killing Zhuowen time and time again. Even if Zhuowen's temper was good, he couldn't help but be angry. Now that Zhuoxinya was dead, the grudge between the two could be considered to have been completely resolved. After dealing with Zhuoxinya, Zhuowen carried Zhuowu into the room. At this moment, Chun-Er was looking at Zhuowen timidly in the room. She was actually gradually backing away. "Young master. You were so scary just now," Chun-Er said weakly, avoiding his gaze. Looking at the timid girl in front of him, Zhuowen revealed a gentle smile. He casually tossed Zhuowu to Chun-Er and said softly, "Don't be afraid. Young master will soon let you live a good life. Tomorrow, young master will take back everything that belongs to young master." "Really?" Chun-Er's eyes suddenly lit up as she asked. Zhuowen nodded lightly, then went to the table next to him. He took out a piece of paper and a pen, then wrote a lot of things on the paper. When Zhuowen finished the last stroke, Zhuowen put it into an envelope, then handed it to Chun-Er and said, "Chun-Er, do me a favor. Tomorrow morning, pass this letter to the housekeeper of Wulong Pavilion and ask him to pass it to my second uncle, Zhuo Dingtian." The Crouching Dragon Pavilion was a famous mansion in the inner courtyard of the clan. It was much bigger than Zhuowen's concentrated fragrance pavilion. The owner of the Crouching Dragon Pavilion was naturally Zhuo Dingtian, who was also Zhuowu's father. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to prove himself, he had to awaken the armor soul in the martial arts arena. In the family, only the head of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Xiangding, knew how to activate the awakening soul tablet. In the Zhuo family, only Zhuowen's first uncle, Zhuo Xiangding, and second uncle, Zhuo Xiangding, could directly ask the head of the Zhuo family to do it. Zhuo Baitian, the first uncle, was obsessed with martial arts, so he was always in seclusion and rarely managed the family's affairs. Zhuo Dingtian, the second uncle, thought that he was not talented enough, so he was more interested in power. Therefore, Zhuo Dingtian's power in the family was only below the head of the family, Zhuo Xiangding. The head of the family, Zhuo Xiangding, also rarely managed the family's affairs, so the daily affairs were basically handled by Zhuo Dingtian. It seemed that Zhuo Dingtian had the power to control the entire Zhuo family. Chun-Er nodded sensibly and said innocently, "Will we be able to live a good life if we pass this letter to the second master?" Zhuowen smiled, gently rubbed Chun-Er's head and said, "Yes." After entering the inner room, Zhuowen casually put the unconscious Zhuowu aside, and then said to himself happily, "After the life-and-death battle with the black-clothed man just now, I feel that my understanding of the primeval chaos dragon roar fist has increased by another level, and I feel that I may be able to break through the realm of 3 dragon roars. It seems that life-and-death battles are really one of the ways to improve strength quickly." Zhuowen smiled, and then his face calmed down. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, gradually comprehending and recalling the gains of the battle just now. Not long after, the yuan qi floating around Zhuo Wen's body suddenly became restless. A strong yuan qi whirlwind gradually accumulated around Zhuo Wen's body. His hair moved without wind, and his clothes wantonly swayed. A deep dragon's roar whizzed out from Zhuo Wen's body, followed by a second dragon's roar. When the second dragon's roar gradually faded away, a third extremely loud dragon's roar suddenly erupted from Zhuo Wen's body. The third dragon roar was loud and clear, and it continued without end, as if it would never end. As the dragon roar gradually faded away, 3 huge dragon-shaped auras suddenly appeared around Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen sat on the 3 huge dragons, and his expression was solemn, as if a god had descended from the heavens. Zhuowen looked at Zhuowen, who was sitting on the 3 huge dragons, in disbelief. He could clearly feel how small and weak he was in front of Zhuowen. Looking at the calm young man in front of him, Zhuowu's face was filled with a complicated expression. This cousin of his that he had never cared about had unknowingly become so powerful, and even he had been defeated by him. The curtain of night gradually faded away, and the first rays of the morning sun shone on the ground, making it seem illusory and dazzling. Deep in the inner court, in the spacious hall of the Crouching Dragon Pavilion, a middle-aged man in a purple brocade robe was frowning slightly, and he muttered to himself, "Why have my eyelids been twitching since yesterday? Could it be that something ominous is about to happen to me? Master, there is a young lady outside who asked me to deliver a letter to you." The young lady also said that this letter must be delivered to you, because it contains information that you must read. A slightly hunchbacked old man in black walked into the hall, holding a letter in his hand. He presented the letter respectfully to the man in purple. The middle-aged man in purple was Zhuowen's second uncle, Zhuowu's father, Zhuo Dingtian. At this time, all the affairs of the Zhuo family were managed by Zhuo Dingtian. Now, his status in the Zhuo family was flourishing, and he was catching up to Zhuo Xiangding, the head of the family. He had some supreme status and power in the inner court. Zhuo Dingtian frowned slightly, looking at the letter in the old man's hand. For some reason, Zhuo Dingtian had a bad feeling in his heart. Did the young lady say anything else? Zhuo Dingtian took a deep breath, and asked with a solemn face. The old man in black stole a glance at Zhuo Dingtian, and then said carefully, "The young lady said that the content of the letter has something to do with young Master Zhuowu. It contains information about young Master Zhuowu." Upon hearing this, Zhuo Dingtian's face changed dramatically. He then took the letter from the old man in black, tore open the envelope, and could not wait to read the content. Since yesterday, Zhuo Dingtian had known that Zhuowu had mysteriously disappeared, and some of Zhuowu's guards had also mysteriously disappeared. However, Zhuo Dingtian thought that Zhuowu must have gone out to flirt, so he did not pay much attention to it. However, the growing sense of uneasiness in his heart made Zhuo Dingtian realize that Zhuowu might have really gone missing. As Zhuo Dingtian continued to read the content of the letter, his face changed constantly. First, it turned from white to red, then from red to green, and finally, his face turned green. Zhuo Dingtian threw the letter in his hand on the ground, and roared with fire in his eyes, "Zhuowen, I didn't expect you to have such guts. Elder Qiao. Go and gather the Black Rain Guards now. Tell them to report to Wulong Pavilion immediately. Today, I will make Zhuowen regret his actions." Upon hearing this, the old man in black was shocked. He had not expected the old master to gather the Black Rain Guards just because of a letter. The Black Rain Guards were an elite troop that Zhuo Dingtian had cultivated himself. There were a total of 100 people in the troop, and almost all of them were at the Divine Valor realm. Even the leader of the Black Rain Guards, Long Yen, had reached the Viscera realm. Chapter 9. Shock the Martial Arts Arena. The Zhuo family's martial arts practice field was as calm and serene as usual. Many of the family's disciples were waving their sweat as they continuously trained themselves. Suddenly, a figure very arrogantly flew straight to the center of the training field, and steadily landed in the center position of the training field. This figure's eyes coldly looked down at the clan's disciples who were training below the training field. The newcomer was none other than Zhuowen. He was currently holding the half-dead Zhuowu in his right hand as he stared coldly in the direction of the Hidden Dragon Pavilion. This morning, Chun had brought his letter to the Wulong Pavilion and handed it to Zhuo Dingtian. In the letter, Zhuowen said that the place of the handover would be at the martial arts practice field. Therefore, Zhuo Dingtian believed that Zhuo Dingtian would definitely appear at the martial arts practice field. He's Zhuowen. How dare this trash appear in the martial arts practice field? Look, Zhuowen is carrying young Master Zhuowu, isn't it? How did young Master Zhuowu end up in Zhuowen's hands? And he seems to be heavily injured. Young Master Zhuowu is an expert in the Divine Valor realm, and his soul armor is at the 4th rank green level. How did he end up like this? Could it be Zhuowen's doing? Impossible. Zhuowen couldn't even awaken his armor soul and had no cultivation at all. How could he defeat young Master Zhuowu who was already in the Divine Valor state? I think it must be Zhuowen who used despicable means to sneak attack young Master Zhuowu. Seeing Zhuowen holding Zhuowu in his hand, Many of the disciples in the training grounds were shocked. However, there were even more disciples who looked at Zhuowen with ill intentions. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the bottom of the training field. Then, a tall young man with a cold expression suddenly jumped onto the training field. The young man first looked at Zhuowen, then looked at Zhuowen, who was not in a clear state of mind, and said coldly, "Zhuowen, you really have some guts to actually injure young Master Zhuowu so severely. What kind of despicable method did a piece of trash like you use to sneak attack young Master Zhuowu? If you don't give me an explanation today, don't even think about leaving the martial arts practice field." As soon as the young man said this, many disciples in the martial arts practice field looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly gazes. The corners of their mouths even revealed malicious smiles. I didn't expect that Zhuoleng would personally take action. He is the strongest disciple in our martial arts practice field. Even the instructor has praised him before. Zhuowen is dead for sure this time. Zhuoleng and young Master Zhuowu had some relationship. Seeing young Master Zhuowu become like this time, he must be extremely angry in his heart. Right now, Zhuowen is no longer the third young master, but merely an ordinary disciple. Even if Zhuoleng accidentally kills him, the clan shouldn't blame him. The sudden appearance of the young man immediately attracted the attention of many people below the martial arts practice field. It was obvious that the young man had some fame among these disciples. Zhuowen indifferently looked at Zhuoleng in front of him, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile. Zhuoleng was a person that Zhuoleng had heard of before. He was the #1 person in the martial arts practice field. At such a young age, his cultivation seemed to have reached the qi refining stage. If not for the fact that the grade of his armor spirit was too low, the clan would have already taken him into the ranks of the core disciples and focused on grooming him. The disciples of the clan were divided into 2 grades, namely the outer disciples and the core disciples. The outer disciples were basically born with armor spirits that were not of a high grade and were assigned to the martial arts practice field to be taught by the clan's instructors. If their cultivation was outstanding, there was still a possibility for them to become a core disciple in the future. Once they became a core disciple, the clan would allocate a pavilion in the inner courtyard for them to cultivate on their own. Moreover, some of the experts in the clan would occasionally give these core disciples pointers. Even precious medicinal ingredients would not be stingy with the use of the core disciples. The treatment of the core disciples was not much worse than that of the clan's young masters. If Zhuowen was able to awaken his armor spirit, the concentrated fragrance pavilion that he owned would not have been confiscated by the clan. Even his status would not have been reduced to that of a lowly servant. And the Zhuoleng in front of him was the most promising outer disciple to be accepted as a core disciple in the clan in recent years. Despicable means? It's obvious that Zhuowu's strength is not enough. Do I need to use despicable means to deal with this kind of trash? Zhuowen lightly kicked Zhuowu and said with an indifferent expression. You! Zhuowen, your guts are really getting bigger and bigger. Since you are so arrogant, I want to have a taste of your strength and see if you have the capital to be arrogant. If you can withstand 3 moves from me, I will not interfere in your matters. How about it? Zhuoleng said with a cold expression as he looked at Zhuowen. No need. I only need 1 move. After 1 move, if you can still stand up, I will immediately let Zhuowu go. Even my life is yours. How about it? When Zhuowen said this, the entire martial arts practice field was in an uproar. All the disciples looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. In their hearts, they were wondering if Zhuowen's brain had been flooded with water. The person standing in front of him was the #1 person in the martial arts practice field, Zhuoleng. He was also the most promising person to become a core disciple of the Zhuo family in recent years. Zhuowen hadn't even awakened his armor soul a few days ago, and he didn't even have the slightest bit of cultivation in his body. However, Zhuowen still proposed such a suicidal condition. This caused many disciples to look at Zhuowen with strange gazes. Zhuowen, I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish. Zhuoleng was so angry that he laughed. He stomped his feet on the ground and his entire body shot out like a cannonball towards Zhuowen. At the same time, a cold-eyed leopard jumped out from Zhuoleng's body. The moment this leopard appeared, it merged with Zhuoleng's body. Then, everyone saw Zhuoleng's body suddenly expand. Sharp claws even appeared on his hands. Senior Zhuoleng actually used his armor spirit right from the start. It seems like Senior Zhuoleng is really angry. He wants to kill Zhuowen in one move. Some of the disciples below the martial arts practice field who were watching the show also exclaimed. Obviously, they were shocked that Zhuoleng had used his full strength. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He knew that the leopard shadow that appeared beside Zhuoleng should be Zhuoleng's armor spirit. The corner of his mouth slightly raised. Zhuowen's muscles suddenly tightened and he clenched his fists tightly. Creaking sounds suddenly came from Zhuowen's arms. Then, Zhuowen suddenly punched out with both his fists. He growled, "Primeval Dragon Roar Fist, First Dragon Roar." A loud and clear dragon roar whizzed out from Zhuowen's body. Then, a huge dragon-shaped aura suddenly surrounded Zhuowen's arms. A strong wave of origin energy also emitted from Zhuowen's body. Looking at Zhuowen, who was full of vigor, the smile on Zhuoleng's face suddenly stiffened. There was even a trace of fear in his eyes. He could clearly feel that the energy contained in the body of the young man in front of him was definitely far beyond his own. How can this trash have such a strong power? Didn't he not have an armor spirit in his body? What the hell is going on? While Zhuoleng's mind was still in shock, Zhuowen's fists fiercely smashed into his claws. Zhuoleng only felt pain in his arms. Then, he felt that he had lost all feeling in his hands. With a miserable howl, Zhuoleng's entire body flew backwards. A mouthful of blood violently spurted out like a faucet that had not been turned on properly. Bang! Like a withered leaf, Zhuoleng crazily vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood. Then, he actually collapsed on the ground, twitching non-stop. At this moment, the entire place fell into silence. Everyone in the martial arts practice field looked in disbelief at the dying Zhuoleng on the ground and Zhuowen, who was completely unharmed. Some of the disciples standing at the front even swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva with difficulty. Their bodies unconsciously trembled. The number one person in the martial arts practice field, Zhuoleng, was actually defeated by Zhuowen in just one move. Moreover, looking at Zhuoleng's current situation, it was obviously not good. Reality has proven that I, Zhuowen, am not a useless person. The real useless person is you, Zhuoleng. Now, you can go in peace. Leaving a useless person like you in this world is just a waste of food. A murderous intent flashed across Zhuowen's eyes. Then, his figure flashed and actually flew towards Zhuoleng. A terrifying yuan power gathered in his right fist. The faint roar of a dragon could be heard. It was filled with a murderous aura. Zhuowen knew that he had to intimidate everyone in the martial arts practice field. The best way to intimidate was naturally to be ruthless. Only a bloody lesson could completely intimidate everyone. Zhuowen! You bastard, you actually dared to cripple my disciple. I think you're tired of living. An angry voice suddenly came from nearby. Then, Zhuowen only felt a gust of wind whistling behind him. He frowned slightly and immediately dodged to the side. His eyes narrowed slightly as he sized up the figure that was about to sneak an attack on him. It was a middle-aged man. His face was covered with a full beard. His body was sturdy and tall. Even Zhuowen only reached the height of this figure's chin. The instructor is finally here. This time, Senior Zhuoleng can be saved. When all the disciples in the martial arts practice field saw this tall figure appear, the originally nervous expression on their faces immediately eased. Zhuowen's performance was too powerful. It suppressed them to the point that they couldn't even breathe. Even their strongest disciple, Zhuoleng, was defeated by Zhuowen in one move. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn as he looked at the figure that just appeared. The instructors in the martial arts practice field arranged by the clan weren't very strong. But even if they weren't very strong, the instructor in front of him had already reached the level of Viscera strengthening realm. In terms of realm, he was faintly one level higher than Zhuowen. The instructor came to Zhuowen's side to check. Then, his eyes spat fire as he looked at Zhuowen not far away. He roared, "You bastard, you actually crippled Zhuoleng's Dantian? I didn't expect a bastard like you to be so vicious. Then, don't blame me for bullying the weak." After the instructor discovered that Zhuoleng's Dantian had been crippled, the anger on his face became even more intense. One must know that Zhuoleng was the most talented disciple in the martial arts practice field. He was also the outer sect disciple who had the highest chance of becoming a core disciple. If Zhuoleng became a core disciple, then the instructor's rewards would naturally be considerable. In fact, his treatment in the clan would be even better. But now, Zhuoleng had been crippled by Zhuowen. Everything was ruined. The instructor was naturally enraged. He couldn't wait to skin Zhuowen and pull out his tendons. Chapter 10. Zhuo Dingtian's killing intent. What an arrogant brat. Today, this old man will teach you a lesson on behalf of the patriarch. If this old man accidentally kills you, then you can't blame me. The instructor snorted coldly. His palms turned into claws, and a trace of dense origin energy instantly surged out from the instructor's body. It was as vast and boundless as the ocean. Mysterious Jade Claw. With a low growl, the coach turned into a shadow and charged toward Zhuowen. His claws were covered with a dense scarlet light, and a scorching heat was emitted from his hands. Zhuowen's complexion was somewhat heavy, but at the same time, there was a trace of excitement in the depths of his eyes. This was the first time he was going up against a body-strengthening stage martial artist. Ever since his primordial roar dragon fist had broken through to the three-dragon roar, Zhuowen felt his entire body brimming with energy. Zhuowen really wanted to test if he had the strength to contend against a body-strengthening stage martial artist. Straightening his spine, Zhuowen stood upright and slightly arched his waist. A loud and clear dragon roar suddenly erupted from Zhuowen's body. Then, Zhuowen let out a loud shout. Instead of retreating, he charged straight at the coach who was attacking him. A pair of fists suddenly turned into a blazing golden dragon, roaring towards the coach with an indomitable will. Primeval Dragon Roar Fist, First Dragon Roar. The instructor's expression changed. He had also sensed the extraordinariness of Zhuowen's armor skill. Although he had some doubts, he didn't think too much about it. The instructor let out a fierce bellow, exuding a heroic spirit that seemed to have the strength to uproot mountains. The mystic jade claw that his right hand had turned into abruptly slammed down, and the huge claw that was formed from his origin power grabbed out toward the huge dragon's head that Zhuowen's fist had turned into. Rumble. When the two collided, essence power instantly overflowed. It was as if the entire martial arts practice grounds had transformed into a sun that radiated light in all directions. The instructor only felt his hands become sluggish. He hurriedly urged the origin power in his body, and the huge mystic jade claw suddenly became a little bigger. Then, the mystic jade claw fiercely grabbed onto the dragon's head, and with a loud roar, the dragon actually broke apart inch by inch. Seeing the huge dragon being torn apart by the mystic jade claw, the disciples in the martial arts practice grounds cheered. They knew that once the huge dragon was broken, Zhuowen no longer had any trump cards to use, and the rest of them could only obediently give in. Even the instructor felt a sense of Zhuowen's origin power was. But when he ruthlessly slammed the mystic jade claw, he suddenly saw a sneer on Zhuowen's. Sensing that something was wrong, the instructor heard Zhuowen shout, "Primordial Dragon Roar Fist, Double Dragon Roar." A loud dragon roar rang out once more. Zhuowen's fists transformed once more to form two colossal dragon auras. The moment the two colossal dragons appeared, they charged towards the profound jade claws. Rumble. The instructor only felt his face turn pale, and retreated a dozen steps. His eyes cautiously looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away. Looking at the pale-faced instructor who kept retreating, the originally cheering disciples in the martial arts practice grounds all fell silent. They all looked at the instructor, who did not have a good expression, with disbelief. The Mystic Jade Claw was a mortal high-level armor skill. Even in the family, it was considered a relatively strong armor skill. Now, the instructor who had reached the inner organ stage was unable to defeat Zhuowen, and even suffered a loss at the hands of Zhuowen. Then, just how strong was this Zhuowen? All the eyes in the martial arts practice grounds were focused on the youth in the center. They realized that the youth in front of them was covered in a layer of fog, appearing mysterious and extraordinary. Bastard brat! Today, this old man will kill you. The instructor was obviously angry because he was defeated by Zhuowen and lost face in front of so many disciples. With a loud shout, the armor soul in his body suddenly appeared in front of him. The instructor's armor soul was the same as the black-clothed leader that Zhuowen met yesterday. They were both gigantism armor souls. It was obvious that this kind of armor soul was relatively common. Once the gigantism armor soul's effect was applied to his body, the instructor's body suddenly grew a lot taller. Moreover, the powerful muscles in his body even tore the clothes on his body. Mystic Jade Claw. With another shout, the instructor used the Mystic Jade Claw again. This time, the Mystic Jade Claw used was many times stronger than before, no matter if it was the size or power. The instructor is serious. He even used the gigantism armor soul. Looks like this brat is really finished. The instructor who uses the gigantism armor soul's strength will increase exponentially. Even if Zhuowen's strength is not bad, how old is he after all? How can he be a match for the instructor who has entered the state now? Sounds of discussion once again came from the training field. Many people were beginning to look down on Zhuowen. This was because the disciples in the training field were very clear about the instructor's true strength. They knew that Zhuowen was dead meat. With a cold snort, Zhuowen swung his fists again. The yuan power in his body continuously gathered on his fists. Another huge dragon's roar was heard. Following that, under the shocked gaze of the crowd, another huge flying dragon hovered above Zhuowen's head. A pair of sharp dragon eyes stared straight at the instructor who was charging over. Victory or defeat will depend on this. Zhuowen growled and flew out without hesitation. Rumble. With a loud sound, a blazing light suddenly shot out from the training field. The intense light caused many disciples to be unable to see the situation in the training field clearly. When the light gradually faded, the disciples in the training field suddenly realized that there was only one person who was still standing. When they looked carefully, they realized that the person who was standing was actually their instructor. Immediately, all the disciples cheered. This old man is really tenacious. He's still so proud even after death. A cold voice suddenly sounded. Following that, Zhuowen, who was originally lying on the ground, slowly stood up. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a rather sorry state. His clothes were tattered and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Wiping away the blood at the corner of his mouth, Zhuowen ignored the instructor who was still standing in the training field. Instead, he came to the side of Zhuo Wu, who had been cowering in the corner all this time. Then, with a plop, he sat down cross-legged and began to recover from his injuries. Although the instructor in the training field wasn't considered an expert in the family, he was still a difficult opponent for Zhuowen. If it wasn't for the 3-dragon roar that he used at the end of the dragon roar fist, Zhuowen wasn't confident that he could defeat the instructor. In fact, the main reason why this instructor was defeated by Zhuowen was that the level of his armor technique was much lower than Zhuowen's. Moreover, the grade of his armor soul wasn't high, so it didn't have that much of an effect on his body. Therefore, he was defeated by Zhuowen. If Zhuowen met a core disciple of the family who was at the Viscera stage, Zhuowen might not be his opponent. As Zhuowen sat down, the instructor who was originally standing motionlessly in the training field suddenly glared at Zhuowen. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and slowly fell to the ground, losing all signs of life. At this moment, the entire training field suddenly quieted down. The shock on the faces of the disciples in the training field gradually turned into fear. The instructor they had always respected was actually not a match for Zhuowen. Then, Who else on the field could be a match for this youth who had always maintained a calm expression? After a while, when Zhuowen opened his eyes again, his brows gradually knitted together. This was because he discovered that there seemed to be many powerful auras gathering towards the training field not far away. Not long after, a group of guards wearing black armor suddenly appeared outside the training field. There were at least 100 of them densely packed together. What was even more shocking was that all of the guards in the 100-man team were full of energy. They had all reached the chi refining stage. Even the guard who was riding a large black horse at the front of the team had reached the level of viscera strengthening stage. Black Rain Guard. It's actually the family's secret force, the Black Rain Guard. It wasn't known who first shouted in the training field, but after that, everyone's faces were filled with shock. Many disciples in the family had heard of the famous Black Rain Guard in the family. It was said that the Black Rain Guard was a young troop cultivated by Zhuo Dingtian himself. The troop was made up of orphans recruited by Zhuo Dingtian from outside. It was an elite troop that was trained from a young age and only obeyed Zhuo Dingtian. Zhuowen squinted his eyes and saw a middle-aged man in purple riding on another big horse. Needless to say, this middle-aged man was Zhuowen's second uncle, Zhuo Dingtian. Zhuo Dingtian opened his eyes and saw Zhuowen on the training field and Zhuo Wu, who was lying beside him, half dead. Of course, when he saw the dispirited Zhuo Wu, his eyes were burning with rage. Zhuowen! How dare you injure my son in public? Now, you are just an ordinary disciple. How dare you go against your superior and injure my son? Now, die! Zhuo Dingtian shouted and arched his body. Then, he shot towards Zhuowen like an arrow released from a bow. So fast! This was the thought in everyone's mind. Zhuo Dingtian was a second-generation disciple in the family. Although his talent was not as good as his elder brother Zhuo Baitian, his cultivation had reached the level of the Yin Void realm, where he could condense the void armor. Zhuo Dingtian's Yuanli was surging like an ocean. At the same time, an illusory armor appeared on Zhuo Dingtian's body. The violent Yuanli caused the Yuanli in the air to resonate. Then, an ear-piercing explosion was heard in the air. After hearing the explosion, many disciples covered their ears in pain, kneeling on the ground and rolling on the ground. Zhuowen's expression suddenly changed. He found that an inexplicable strong qi had locked him up. Now, he could not move at all. Zhuowen did not expect that Zhuo Dingtian did not call his grandfather Zhuo Xiangding. Instead, he brought his Black Rain Guard to the training field and attacked him with all his strength. Looking at Zhuo Dingtian's unreasonable attitude and the terrible killing intent in his eyes, Zhuo Dingtian obviously wanted to kill Zhuowen on the training field. Chapter 11. Another breakthrough. At this moment, Zhuowen was like a small boat in the vast ocean that could capsize at any time. He could not move at all under the powerful aura of Zhuo Dingtian. Zhuowen could see the murderous intent in Zhuo Dingtian's eyes as he approached. He knew that his second uncle really wanted to kill him. Ah! Move! Roaring towards the sky, Zhuowen began to circulate the elemental energy within his body without any regard for his life. A surge of elemental energy instantly surged out from within Zhuowen's body. Roar! 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 A deep and domineering dragon roar rang out from Zhuowen's body. Then, a draconic aura appeared above Zhuowen's head. The three gigantic dragon-shaped auras hovered in the sky, roaring unceasingly. For a moment, it was quite a spectacular sight. Even some of the disciples in the martial arts arena couldn't help but tremble in fear when they saw the power erupting from Zhuowen's body. They finally knew why their instructor lost. It was because the youth in front of them was too abnormal. You do have some ability. However, you are only in the divine valor realm. Do you think you can escape from the suppression of my aura? Zhuo Dingtian looked at Zhuowen in amazement. Then, a ferocious look appeared on his face, and the murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger. He didn't expect that not only had Zhuowen reached the divine valor realm, but the power he was displaying now was far beyond his cultivation level. He knew that the rumors about Zhuowen being a good-for-nothing were wrong. This kid had obviously inherited his father's terrifying talent. Moreover, Zhuo Dingtian also saw the instructor who was killed by Zhuowen. The instructor's cultivation was at the Viscera Strengthening realm. Although he had just entered the Viscera Strengthening realm, his combat strength was still not to be underestimated. However, he was still killed by Zhuowen, which showed that Zhuowen's potential was absolutely amazing. This child cannot be allowed to live. Otherwise, another Zhuo Shaotian will definitely threaten my position in the future. At this moment, the killing intent in Zhuo Dingtian's eyes became even more intense. The yuan power in his body also became unusually turbulent. Break for me! Zhuowen roared again. His eyes were bloodshot. Another dragon roar came out from Zhuowen's body. Then, the fourth draconic aura drilled out from his body. At this moment, the four draconic aura roared at the same time. In an instant, the entire martial arts arena was filled with a huge whirlwind of yuan power. Who would have thought that Zhuowen could break through to a new realm under such great pressure? Chaotic Roar Dragon Fist, 4 Draconic Aura. The 4 giant dragons roared and intertwined with each other to form 4 gigantic dragon-shaped whirlwinds. The enormous yuan power undulations that they formed immediately caused the Zhuo family disciples, who had lower cultivations, to retreat by more than 10 steps. Some of them even spat out blood. Everyone looked at Zhuowen, who was surrounded by 4 Draconic Aura. They had never thought that Zhuowen, who was only in the Divine Valor realm, could escape from Zhuo Dingtian, who was in the Yin Void realm, and still move freely. With a loud bang, Zhuowen felt the huge pressure on his body recede like a tide. Then, Zhuowen jumped up and grabbed Zhuo Wu, who was curled up at the side. His eyes were fixed on Zhuo Dingtian, who was not far away from him. Zhuo Dingtian, if you dare to take another step forward, your son will die without a burial place. Zhuowen looked at Zhuo Dingtian with hatred in his eyes. He pinched Zhuo Wu's neck with one hand and said fiercely. Zhuo Wu also felt the shadow of death. His lifeless eyes suddenly recovered. He screamed at Zhuo Dingtian, "Father! Help me! Help me!" Zhuo Dingtian looked at Zhuowen coldly and stopped moving forward. He said coldly, "Zhuowen, let Wu go, or I'll make you wish you were dead. Old man, you have a good plan. You want me to let Zhuo Wu go with just a few words? It seems that you won't give in unless I show you something ruthless." A sinister smile appeared on Zhuo Wen's face. Next, his left hand abruptly grabbed Zhuo Wu's left arm and twisted it. With a cracking sound, Zhuo Wu's left arm was twisted out of shape. Clearly, it had been crippled. Zhuo Wu screamed with tears and snot running down his face. He kept begging Zhuowen for forgiveness. "You! Zhuowen, what do you want? What do you want to let Wu go?" Zhuo Dingtian was furious. However, since his son was in Zhuowen's hands, he did not dare to act rashly. "Get my grandfather here. I want him to test the armor soul in my body again. I've said that I, Zhuowen, am not a good-for-nothing. Today, I'll prove it to you." Zhuowen said calmly. "Zhuowen, the Ju Soul Tablet is never wrong. Since you didn't awaken the armor soul last time, it proves that you don't have the armor soul in your body. Although I don't know how you got such a cultivation, I advise you not to humiliate yourself." Zhuo Dingtian said with a sarcastic smile. The other disciples of the Zhuo family also looked at Zhuowen mockingly. Apparently, they despised him for wanting to test the armor soul again. The Ju Soul Tablet had been in the Zhuo family for so many years, and it had never made a mistake. Since it did not awaken the armor soul the first time, it would not work for the second and third time. Crack! Another crisp bone-cracking sound rang out. Zhuo Wu's right arm was broken by Zhuowen once more. Zhuo Wu was unable to endure the intense pain and fainted. Hearing the clear sound of bones cracking, everyone started to feel scared. They did not expect Zhuowen to be so ruthless. He broke Zhuo Wu's arms without saying anything. Everyone looked at Zhuowen's young face and felt a tinge of fear in their hearts. This seemingly harmless youth was actually very decisive and iron-willed when he did things. Many disciples were secretly glad that they had not offended Zhuowen in the past. Otherwise, the consequences would not be any better than Zhuowu's. If you want your son to die, do as I say. Unless you want your son to die. Zhuowen was unmoved. His face was still calm and indifferent. Okay. I promise you. I will go and look for the family head now. However, you can't hurt Zhuowu anymore. Otherwise, I will kill you even if I have to risk my life. Looking at the merciless Zhuowen, Zhuo Dingtian felt his scalp tingle. He realized that this young man in front of him was much more difficult to deal with than his father. After taking a deep look at Zhuowen, Zhuo Dingtian immediately called for the Black Rain guards behind him to return. Then, he disappeared from everyone's sight alone. After a while, Zhuowen sensed a few powerful auras coming from the family's inner courtyard. Then, a few figures suddenly came to the training field. Zhuowen took a closer look and realized that there were a total of 4 people. The one in front was the white-haired Zhuo Xiangding, who was followed closely by Zhuo Dingtian. As for the other 2 people, one of them was a middle-aged man in a green robe. There was always a faint smile on his face. Zhuowen knew the middle-aged man in the green robe. He was Zhuowen's uncle, Zhuo Baitian. He was a cultivation maniac who was always in seclusion. It was said that his cultivation level had reached an unfathomable level. The other person caused Zhuowen to be slightly surprised because this person was actually a young woman who was even younger than him. She had an oval face, large eyes, and skin that was as white as snow. It was smooth, tender, and lustrous, causing one to have the impulse to pinch her skin upon seeing it. At this time, the young lady's big eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Zhuowen and the half-dead Zhuowu in Zhuowen's hands. You are the Zhuowen who couldn't awaken his armor soul. You don't look like a waste like the rumors say you are. The young lady was not afraid of strangers and walked up to Zhuo Xiangding as she spoke arrogantly. The moment the young girl spoke, she immediately attracted the attention of all the Zhuo family disciples in the training field. The moment they saw the young girl, Zhuowen also heard a series of gasps below the field. It's actually Miss Zhuo Xiang'er. She is the #1 genius of our Zhuo family's younger generation. I didn't expect Miss Xiang'er to come as well. Miss Xiang'er is already so beautiful at such a young age. I wonder how beautiful she will be when she grows up. Hearing the discussions below, Zhuowen knew that the young lady in front of him was the famous Zhuo Xiang'er in the Zhuo family. He had heard that Zhuo Xiang'er had awakened her armor soul when she was 8 years old. Moreover, her armor soul had reached grade 6. In the next few years, her cultivation had increased rapidly and she had reached the spirit-detecting realm. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Zhuo Xiang'er. He wasn't interested in this kind of self-righteous girl, so he walked around Zhuo Xiang'er and stared at Zhuo Xiangding. He calmly said, "Grandfather, please help me open the awakening tablet. Please help me activate the awakening soul tablet. This time, I won't let you down." Zhuowen. How can you be so rude? I'm talking to you. Seeing Zhuowen ignore her, Zhuo Xiang'er was a bit annoyed. She stomped her foot and was about to flip out. However, Zhuo Xiangding quickly stopped Zhuo Xiang'er. Then he looked at Zhuowen with surprise and said, "Your cultivation has reached the divine valor realm? Were you the one who defeated the instructor and Zhuoleng?" Zhuowen faintly nodded, tacitly admitting it. After hearing Zhuo Xiangding's words, Zhuo Xiang'er and Zhuo Baitian also noticed Zhuoleng and the instructor lying on the ground at the side of the training field. When they saw that the instructor and Zhuoleng were unconscious, a strange expression appeared on their faces. This guy has some ability. He can actually defeat an armored warrior at the vigorous Viscera realm. Zhuo Xiang'er raised her eyebrows and looked at Zhuowen in a different light. Zhuowen. Very good. You actually reached the divine valor realm by yourself. Zhuo Baitian also showed a rare kind smile as he praised Zhuowen. As for Zhuo Dingtian, his expression wasn't very good. He coldly said, "Zhuowen. You can let Wu go now." "Yes." But we'll talk about it after I finish my awakening tablet. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he said calmly. Bastard! Zhuo Dingtian roared and was about to pounce on Zhuowen. He felt that he had been fooled by Zhuowen. Second brother. Stop! This old man wants to test Zhuowen's armor soul first. As for your grudges, we'll talk about them later. Chapter 12. Triple Armor Soul. Zhuo Dingtian glared at Zhuowen and sneered, "Do you really think you are a genius just because you have some cultivation? Without the soul armor, you're still trash. No matter how many times you try, it's all in vain. Whether it's futile or not isn't up to you to decide. It's up to the awakening soul tablet to decide. Later, open your dog eyes wide and see whether I, Zhuowen, am trash or not." Zhuowen's expression was calm as he arrived in front of the awakening soul tablet and responded indifferently. Zhuo Dingtian snorted but did not retort. He knew that anything he said before the results of the awakening soul tablet were out. Following Zhuowen's actions, all of the Zhuo family disciples in the martial arts practice field turned their gazes to the calm youth in front of the awakening soul tablet. There was a complicated look in the eyes of many disciples. This was because this young man had become so powerful in just a few days. His strength had also increased by several folds. Now, even Zhuo Dingtian, who was the most powerful person in the Zhuo family, had suffered a loss at the hands of this young man. Everyone wanted to know if the youth in front of the awakening soul tablet could create a miracle and successfully awaken the armor soul. With Zhuowen's current strength, if he succeeded in awakening his soul, then Zhuowen would be like a tiger that had grown wings. His position in the family would no longer be shaken. "Daddy! Do you think this Zhuowen has a chance of successfully reaching soul awakening?" Zhuo Xiang looked at the youth in front of the Jiehuan tablet, whose expression had been very calm from beginning to end, and her heart suddenly became very interested. "Absolutely. That's because I can sense a very subtle armor-soul fluctuation on Zhuowen's body. You know that I'm very sensitive to the soul." At this time, Zhuo Beitian's expression was somewhat serious as he said flatly. "Then, do you think his soul armor's quality will be higher than mine?" Zhuo Xiang asked relentlessly. "Silly girl. The quality of your armor soul is the highest in the history of the Zhuo family. Even in Rattan Armor City, not many people have 6th grade armor souls. Even your grandfather's armor soul is inferior to yours. Although Zhuowen is a little special, I don't think it's possible for his soul armor to surpass yours." Zhuo Baitian lovingly caressed Zhuo Xiang's hair, his face full of pride. As a father, Zhuo Baitian was naturally very gratified to see his daughter so outstanding. "Humph. This guy just pretended to be aloof and ignored me. The quality of his soul armor is inferior to mine and his cultivation is inferior to mine. What right does he have to pretend to be aloof?" Zhuo Xiang enjoyed Zhuowen's praise, but when she thought about how Zhuowen had ignored her, she glared angrily at his back. Zhuo Baitian looked helplessly at the childish Zhuo Xiang, then turned his attention to Zhuowen, who was standing in front of the awakening soul tablet. The awakening soul tablet was located in the center of the martial arts field. It was 5 zhang tall and completely ink black. Moreover, its surface was engraved with complex and cryptic characters. Looking at the awakening soul tablet in front of him with a complicated gaze, Zhuowen could clearly feel the throbbing in the depths of his soul and a trace of unwillingness. Zhuowen knew that this should be the original Zhuowen's subconscious emotion. This was because the original Zhuowen had lost everything after the awakening soul tablet. He had been ridiculed and bullied time and time again. "Are you ready?" Zhuo Xiangding's slightly aged voice sounded. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen nodded slightly, then slowly pressed his right palm on the awakening soul tablet's surface. Zhuo Xiangding nodded inwardly. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, his hands formed a mysterious seal. His hands were like a storm as they continuously struck the awakening soul tablet's surface. After a while, the strange characters engraved on the awakening soul tablet suddenly seemed to come alive. They actually began to emit a bright red light. Then, these characters were like water that constantly flowed on the awakening soul tablet's surface. At the same time, Zhuowen could feel a very strange energy coming from the awakening soul tablet. This energy was illusory and directly penetrated Zhuowen's body and went straight to the depths of his mind. This strange energy suddenly turned into a hook in Zhuowen's mind. The faint hook instantly hooked out the stealth armor soul in the outermost layer of Zhuowen's mind. However, the medicine cauldron armor soul hidden in the depths of Zhuowen's mind went crazy for some reason. It actually rejected the awakening soul tablet's power. At the same time, it also emitted another powerful force that firmly sucked in the stealth armor soul that was about to be pulled out by the hook. For a moment, the two different forces actually started a tug-of-war, not giving way to each other. Damn Jade Cauldron Armor Soul, you're trying to piss me off. Seeing that the stealth armor soul was about to be taken away, the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul just had to interfere. This made Zhuowen's teeth itch in anger. No! If this bastard Jade Cauldron gets hold of me, I won't be able to awaken the armor soul. I need to find a way to calm down the medicine cauldron armor soul. Zhuowen fiercely glared at the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul and used his mind to control the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul to remove the suction on the Stealth Armor Soul. On the martial arts field, everyone held their breaths, wanting to see if the young man in front of the Awakening Soul tablet could awaken the Armor Soul. For a moment, the empty martial arts field suddenly became empty and silent. Minutes and seconds passed, but the Awakening Soul tablet still did not have the slightest reaction. This made many of the expectant disciples in the martial arts field impatiently look on their faces. Some even had a look of schadenfreude on their faces. It seems that you're still a good-for-nothing. This old man said that since you didn't succeed the first time, then try a few more times and the result will be the same. It won't change. Zhuo Dingtian saw that the Awakening Soul tablet did not have the slightest reaction and immediately said sarcastically. Zhuo Baitian furrowed his brows and remained silent, while Zhuo Xiang, who was beside him, shook her head slightly, feeling a little bored. She had thought that Zhuo Wen would have an unexpected result in the process of awakening his soul, but nothing had happened. Zhuo Xiangding's originally expectant expression gradually dimmed. He shook his head slightly, a trace of disappointment flashing across his face. Zhuo Wen. Grandfather has done his best. Since you. Just as Zhuo Xiangding was about to remove the power of the Awakening Soul tablet, the originally motionless Awakening Soul tablet suddenly shone brightly. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a faint black shadow suddenly flew out of Zhuowen's body and landed on the top of the Awakening Soul tablet. Then, the color of the words on the surface of the Awakening Soul tablet suddenly changed 3 times, and finally stopped at yellow. 3rd grade Yellow Armor Soul, Stealth. Zhuo Xiangding looked at the black shadow that flew out and said faintly. Although a 3rd grade armor soul was not bad, it was very different from Zhuo Xiangding's expectations. In fact, Zhuo Xiangding hoped that Zhuowen's armor soul could reach the 5th grade. This way, as the armor soul grew in the future, it would be of great benefit to the growth of his strength. As for a 3rd grade armor soul, its potential was much worse. A 3rd grade armor soul. It's not bad, but its potential is a little lacking. With the talent that Zhuowen has shown now, he should be able to barely enter the ranks of the core disciples. Zhuo Baitian said with a slight smile. Humph. It's just a 3rd grade armor soul. What's so great about it? Zhuo Xiang said with a cold snort. No one was more surprised than Zhuo Dingtian. At this time, Zhuo Dingtian's face was very ugly. He knew that once Zhuowen had an armor soul in his body, he would inevitably be valued by the family again. At that time, it would be difficult for him to make a move on Zhuowen. Why hasn't the Jehuan tablet stopped? Isn't the Jehuan tablet finished? Suddenly, a voice came from below the martial arts practice field. As the voice fell, everyone in the martial arts practice field once again looked at the Jehuan tablet. They saw that the Jehuan tablet was still operating as the voice had said, and Zhuowen's eyes were still closed. There was no sign of him waking up. Could it be that there is another armor soul in Zhuowen's body? At this time, Zhuo Xiangding suddenly thought of a possibility. His hands suddenly trembled, and his eyes, which were originally a little disappointed, suddenly brightened up. Zhuo Baitian and Zhuo Xiang looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. Obviously, they had the same idea as Zhuo Xiangding. At this time, Zhuo Dingtian's face was gloomy, and there was a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Boom! A slight sound came, and then everyone clearly saw another shadow fly out of Zhuowen's body. This shadow was in the shape of a sword, and it was the armor soul, sword shadow. At the same time, the color of the words on the Jiahuan tablet changed 5 times in an instant, and finally stopped at purple. The armor soul, sword shadow, had reached the 5th grade purple level. The dazzling purple was suddenly magnified in the martial arts practice field, illuminating everyone's faces. Hiss! Everyone in the martial arts practice field took a deep breath and looked at the 2 armor souls on the Jiahuan tablet. They knew that they had seen a rare phenomenon, twin armor souls. In the limited history of the heavenly armor continent, warriors with twin armor souls were all earth-shattering figures, because having 2 armor souls meant that they had 2 special abilities and 2 powerful amplifications. Even if the quality of the 2 armor souls was not high, their combined power would definitely surpass some high-quality single armor souls. It was just that warriors with twin armor souls were very rare. Zhuo Xiangding could not help but tremble. This was because he was too excited. He did not expect that the small Zhuo family could produce a warrior with twin armor souls. Such a person would definitely become a supreme expert in the future. Zhuo Xiangding knew that if Zhuowen did not die prematurely, the Zhuo family would definitely reach a new peak. As expected of Xiaotian's son, he actually has twin armor souls. Zhuo Xiangding's voice trembled slightly at this time. When everyone slowly recovered from the shock, they found that the Jiahuan tablet still had no impulse to stop. Suddenly, a ridiculous idea gradually emerged in everyone's mind. Could it be that there was a 3rd armor soul in Zhuowen's body? Triple armor soul. Chapter 13. Shattered memorial tablet. At this moment, the martial arts arena fell into absolute silence. Everyone's eyes were focused on the young man standing in front of the memorial tablet with his eyes closed. Everyone's expression was very interesting. This guy. Zhuo Xiang's jade-like hands lightly covered her cherry lips. The disdain and anger in her beautiful eyes had turned into shock. Originally, the fact that Zhuowen had twin armor souls had greatly surprised Zhuo Xiang. But now, the memorial tablet showed that there was a 3rd armor soul hidden in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. This kind of violent shock made Zhuo Xiang speechless. Ever since Zhuo Xiang awakened a 6th grade armor soul, she had unknowingly become the #1 genius of the family. She was the center of attention wherever she went. However, when Zhuo Xiang saw with her own eyes that Zhuowen was about to awaken a 3rd armor soul, she knew that she was very wrong. With his triple armor soul, Zhuowen's talent was absolutely superior to hers. Zhuo Baitian seemed to have also sensed that his daughter's mood was slightly down. He patted Zhuo Xiang's shoulder and said, "Your talent is already one of the best. It's just that Zhuowen is too abnormal." Sigh. As expected of 3rd brother's son. I can almost see 3rd brother's shadow in Zhuowen. Father. I heard that 3rd uncle was the most talented person in the family. Is he as abnormal as Zhuowen now? Zhuo Xiang looked at her father with slight curiosity. In the past, she often heard her father talk about this 3rd uncle that she had never seen before. She could even see the regret and admiration on her father's face from time to time. Your 3rd uncle's talent is indeed the best I have ever seen in my life. More importantly, 3rd brother has twin armor souls. Compared to Zhuowen's triple armor soul, he is slightly inferior. But at that time, there was almost no one among the younger generation in Rattan Armor City who could rival him. At that time, the Zhuo family was the head of the 3 major families in Rattan Armor City. Unfortunately, after that incident, 3rd brother disappeared. Zhuo Baitian's tone was somewhat sorrowful. However, it seemed that there was something difficult to say. He stopped in the middle of his words and did not continue. What incident? What happened at that time? Why would third uncle disappear for no reason? Zhuo Xiang's curiosity was piqued. When she realized that her father had stopped talking, she hurriedly asked. Xiang, you don't need to know about it. Let's see what Zhuowen's third armor soul is first. Zhuo Beiqian's expression turned serious and he did not continue to speak. Instead, he looked at the back of Zhuowen, who was still standing on the awakening soul tablet with his eyes closed. The corners of Zhuo Xiang's mouth twitched. She knew that her father hated to get to the bottom of things. In the middle of the training field, in front of the awakening soul tablet, Zhuowen's face suddenly revealed a pained expression, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead, as if he was bearing great pain. On the surface, Zhuowen seemed very calm. However, at that moment, Zhuowen's sea of consciousness was not as calm as it had been before. Originally, Zhuowen had used his own will to drag out the stealth and shadow sword armor souls for the awakening soul ritual. What did not disappoint him was that after the awakening soul tablet's power filtration, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the two armor souls' energy had greatly increased. After pulling out the two armor souls in succession, the inexplicable power of the awakening soul tablet seemed to have targeted the Jade Cauldron armor soul in the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. An even larger hook had broken into the deepest part of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, wanting to pull out the Jade Cauldron armor soul as well. Zhuowen was actually a little uncertain about the Jade Cauldron armor soul. After all, the Jade Cauldron was not something from this world. Zhuowen had brought it from Earth, and it had mysteriously entered his sea of consciousness. Zhuowen was not sure if this thing could be guided out like he had with the awakening soul tablet. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that when the hook formed by the awakening soul tablet entered the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, the Jade Cauldron armor soul suddenly buzzed, and then a suction force that was many times stronger than before suddenly appeared. This suction force turned into a huge spiral vortex in the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. The depths of the vortex were pitch black, as if it were a bottomless pit. The huge vortex unceremoniously sucked the hook formed by the awakening soul tablet. Then, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the strange energy contained in the awakening soul tablet was directly sucked into the vortex, and the strange energy of the awakening soul tablet was continuously being sucked away by the vortex. If Zhuowen opened his eyes now, he would see the strange runes on the surface of the awakening soul tablet in front of him begin to emit a bright red light. Then, these runes suddenly turned into small tadpole-like tadpoles and slowly drilled into Zhuowen's body. As soon as these bright red runes entered Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, they were sucked away by the vortex and then engraved on the body of the Jade Cauldron armor soul in the depths of his sea of consciousness. Originally, the Jade Cauldron armor soul was not complete. It was broken, and the body of the cauldron was rusty and looked very inconspicuous. However, when the runes on the awakening soul tablet entered the Jade Cauldron, a faint pattern gradually appeared on the surface of the Jade Cauldron. Vaguely, Zhuowen could recognize that the pattern on the body of the cauldron was the shape of a flame, but it was very blurry. When the last of the energy of the awakening soul tablet was absorbed by the Jade Cauldron armor soul, Zhuowen found that the originally rusty Jade Cauldron had become slightly smoother. At the same time, a message appeared in Zhuowen's mind: the power of the runes is sufficient. The Jade Cauldron has evolved from the mortal level to the human level. The host can use the 8th soul to exchange for the human level pill formula. Soon after, Zhuowen discovered that a lot of unfamiliar information had appeared in his mind. After a cursory glance, Zhuowen discovered that this information was actually all pill formulas. These pill formulas only had a rough introduction and did not have the slightest content. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to know the content of the pill formula, he had to exchange it with the armor soul. Now, the pill formulas in his mind were basically all for the human level pill. The effect was a grade higher than the previous health pill. Not only was the quality of the human level pill much higher than the mortal level pill, but if he wanted to refine the human level pill, he had to have the raw materials. The previous health pill structure was simple, so the Jade Cauldron only needed to absorb Yuan Qi to make it. However, the human level pill was different. Many of the ingredients inside could not be replaced by yuan qi. It needed the corresponding medicinal materials to refine it. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He did not expect that the awakening soul could actually make the Jade Cauldron Armor soul evolve. This was a little unexpected for Zhuowen. At the same time, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from Zhuowen's body. Then, a loud buzzing sound rang out from Zhuowen's body. A huge Jade Cauldron Phantom enveloped Zhuowen's body. With the appearance of the huge Jade Cauldron Phantom, the surface of the Awakening Soul Tablet suddenly changed color. First, it changed color 5 times in a row to purple. Then, with a boom, the Awakening Soul Tablet's color suddenly changed again to orange. Looking at the dazzling orange color of the Awakening Soul Tablet, everyone in the martial arts arena felt that their minds were unable to function. They did not expect that the quality of Zhuowen's third armor soul would actually reach the 6th grade. The quality of this armor soul alone was equal to that of Zhuoxiang. However, the Awakening Soul Tablet did not stop. The color of the tablet changed again, becoming a dazzling red. No one expected that Zhuowen's Jade Cauldron Armor soul would break through the 6th grade and reach the 7th grade. At this time, Zhuoxiangding began to lose his calm. His whole body trembled slightly, and his muddy old eyes were filled with amazement and excitement. Zhuowen had brought him too many surprises. Not only did Zhuowen have 3 armor souls, but one of them had even reached the 7th grade. How could this not make Zhuoxiangding extremely excited? After the Awakening Soul Tablet's color reached red, it stayed there for a while. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the red color gradually faded away. Unexpectedly, a little bit of golden light began to appear. Clearly, the quality of Zhuowen's Jade Cauldron Armor soul had faintly reached the 8th grade. Heavens! An 8th grade armor soul. It's actually an 8th grade armor soul. How is this possible? Our Zhuo family actually has an 8th grade armor soul. This is really incredible. Looking at the gradually glowing surface of the Awakening Soul Tablet, the martial arts arena was in an uproar. They all knew very well what an 8th grade armor soul meant. An armor soul of this quality was definitely a heaven-defying existence. In the entire Muqin County, there might not even be an 8th grade armor soul. Moreover, the owner of this 8th grade armor soul had 3 armor souls. Everyone in the martial arts arena looked at Zhuowen with a different gaze. They knew how great the potential of this unremarkable young man in front of them was. As long as he did not fall, this young man was almost a reserve candidate for the strongest in the heavenly armor continent. Crack! Just as the golden light on the surface of the Awakening Soul Tablet gradually deepened, cracks began to appear on the surface of the Awakening Soul Tablet. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the cracks spread like a spider web. Finally, the tall Awakening Soul Tablet crumbled inch by inch and turned into fine powder. At this moment, the martial arts arena was suddenly silent. Everyone looked at Zhuowen with a strange expression. They did not expect that the Awakening Soul Tablet that had stood in the martial arts arena of their family for so many years would turn into fine powder in the hands of this young man. Ha ha ha. Well done, Zhuowen, you really did not disappoint me. Not only did you have 3 armor souls, but the 3rd soul in your body has reached the 8th grade. The armor soul in your body is so strong that even the Awakening Soul Tablet could not withstand it and shattered. Zhuoxiangding looked at the shattered Awakening Soul Tablet with a pained expression. However, he then came to Zhuowen's side and gently patted Zhuowen's shoulder with a big smile on his face. Although the shattering of the Awakening Soul Tablet made Zhuoxiangding's heart ache, being able to witness the birth of a genius like Zhuowen made Zhuoxiangding even happier. He knew that as long as Zhuowen grew up, the development of the Zhuo family would definitely reach the peak. Zhuowen. Now, you are qualified to become a core disciple of the Zhuo family. Tomorrow, you will move to the Veiled Dragon Pavilion in the inner court. Zhuoxiangding announced loudly, his face full of smiles. Upon hearing the words Veiled Dragon Pavilion, everyone in the martial arts arena was moved. The Veiled Dragon Pavilion was a famous luxurious pavilion in the inner court. It could be ranked in the top 5 among all the pavilions in the inner court. Even a genius like Zhuo Xiang was not qualified to live in the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Chapter 14. The curtain fell. Zhuowen smiled, but there was not much emotion on his face. Zhuowen had expected such a result, but the jade tripod armor soul's quality was beyond Zhuowen's expectation. Zhuowen, can you release Wu now? Zhuo Dingtian said coldly, glancing at Zhuowen with a gloomy face and a hint of fear. Zhuowen glanced at Zhuo Dingtian, curled up the corners of his mouth and said calmly, sure. Then he lifted up Zhuo Wu, who was curled up in the corner, and threw him to Zhuo Dingtian like a piece of garbage. Zhuo Wu, the poor guy, had been scared out of his wits. Now he became timid when he saw Zhuowen. Seeing Zhuowen throw Zhuo Wu to him so casually, Zhuo Dingtian was a little angry. However, Zhuowen's status was not the same as before, so he did not dare to make things difficult for him on the spot. Zhuo Xiangding also saw the seriously injured Zhuo Wu in Zhuowen's hands, but he had no intention of intervening. Zhuowen's talent was enough to attract his attention, so he did not want to blame Zhuowen for such a trivial matter. Although Zhuo Wu was also his grandson, and his talent wasn't weak, compared to Zhuowen, the difference was like heaven and earth. As long as Zhuowen didn't kill Zhuo Wu, Zhuo Xiangding basically wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Wu, how are you? Zhuo Dingtian took Zhuo Wu and began to check his body. However, when he found that Zhuo Wu's dantian had been destroyed, his face became gloomier. Zhuowen, how could you destroy Wu's dantian and make him useless? He is your cousin, how could you do that? Zhuo Dingtian's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Zhuowen fiercely. A beast-like roar came from Zhuo Dingtian's body. The turbulent original energy began to condense around Zhuo Dingtian, and the void armor, which was unique to the Yin Void realm, quietly attached itself to Zhuo Dingtian's body, making him look majestic. Hearing Zhuo Dingtian's words, all the people in the martial arts practice field fixed their eyes on Zhuowen. They had thought that Zhuowen had only seriously injured Zhuo Wu, but they had not expected that Zhuowen would destroy Zhuo Wu's dantian. Dantian was the foundation of an armor warrior. Without it dantian, he could not accumulate original energy, and his cultivation could not be improved. He would be disabled. When everyone saw that Zhuowen's face was still calm and indifferent, they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. Thinking back to how Zhuowen had mercilessly killed Zhuoleng and the martial arts practice field instructor at the beginning, they knew that this seemingly harmless youth in front of them was definitely not to be trifled with. Even Zhuo Baitian and his daughter, who had been silent, could not help but show a shocked expression when they heard that Zhuo Wu had been destroyed. Zhuowen, I will kill you to avenge Wu. A strong aura suddenly emanated from Zhuo Dingtian's body, and the original energy on the surface of his body became more turbulent. Zhuo Dingtian bounced his legs and turned into a shadow, flying toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at the crazy Zhuo Dingtian with a faint sarcastic smile. Then a magnificent figure suddenly appeared in front of Zhuowen and blocked Zhuo Dingtian's attack. At the same time, Zhuo Dingtian retreated a dozen steps. Father! He destroyed Wu. You watched Wu grow up with your own eyes. Are you just going to watch Wu get destroyed without doing anything? Zhuo Dingtian said in a hoarse voice, as if he had aged a dozen years. Zhuo Xiangding sighed slightly, and then said in a tough tone, Zhuowen is indeed in the wrong, but Zhuowen is my grandson. Isn't Zhuowen my grandson? Now, you want to kill Zhuowen in front of me. Do you think I, the patriarch, am nothing? I have investigated the matter between Zhuo Wu and Zhuowen. First, Zhuo Wu wanted to assassinate Zhuowen. Zhuowen had no choice but to fight back. As for Zhuo Wu's destruction, it was his own fault. If he had not tried to assassinate Zhuowen, this would not have happened. Zhuo Xiangding said coldly. Zhuowen looked at Zhuo Xiangding's back in surprise. He did not expect that his grandfather had already investigated the grudge between him and Zhuo Xiangding. Moreover, Zhuo Xiangding was obviously siding with Zhuowen. Zhuo Xiangding gradually calmed down. He knew that no matter how he complained, Zhuo Xiangding would not punish Zhuowen. Because Zhuowen's talent was too dazzling. In Zhuo Xiangding's heart, even 10 Zhuo Wus could not compare to one finger of Zhuo Wu. Therefore, how could Zhuo Xiangding punish Zhuowen for Zhuo Wu? Father. I was too impulsive just now. I apologize to Zhuowen for what happened just now. Zhuo Dingtian took a deep breath and apologized to Zhuowen calmly. Then, he left the martial arts field with Zhuo Wu in his arms. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at Zhuo Dingtian's back. Although Zhuo Dingtian apologized to him, Zhuowen could still see the deep killing intent and madness hidden deep in Zhuo Dingtian's heart. Obviously, Zhuo Dingtian was not as relieved as he appeared to be. My second uncle is really scheming. It seems that I have to be careful. Zhuowen muttered to himself after pondering for a while. He could feel that Zhuo Dingtian was very dangerous. This kind of person who knew how to endure was like a poisonous snake hiding in the dark. He would bite you at any time. Zhuowen. Now that you are a core disciple of the family, you should go back and pack up. Tomorrow, you should move to the inner courtyard early. The family competition will be held in 3 months. Although your talent is amazing, you still need to practice diligently to achieve something. I hope that you can surprise me in 3 months. This is the family token. With this token, you can enter and leave the inner courtyard freely. A green jade token floated into Zhuowen's hand. Zhuo Xiangding smiled at Zhuowen. Then, he turned into a shadow and left the martial arts field. As for Zhuo Xiangding, he nodded gently at Zhuowen and left with Zhuo Xiangding. Zhuowen. You'd better be careful of second uncle. I heard that he has an eldest son named Zhuo Tian. If Zhuo Tian knows that you crippled his younger brother, he will never let you go. Unknowingly, the mischievous Zhuo Xiang had come to Zhuowen's side. Her voice was as light as a lark's and immediately sounded in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen looked at the girl in front of him with some surprise and said, Zhuo Tian? Why haven't I heard of this person before? Could it be that his cultivation is higher than yours? Of course. Zhuo Tian's cultivation is at the peak of the spirit-detecting realm. He's only 1 step away from the soul transformation realm. Right now, he seems to be in seclusion to make a breakthrough. If he comes out, it means that he's very likely to have made a breakthrough. Zhuo Xiang said with a slightly unnatural gaze. Aren't you the #1 genius of the Zhuo family? Why is your cultivation lower than Zhuo Tian's? Zhuowen asked curiously. Zhuowen didn't have any impression of Zhuo Tian. Or rather, he had never seen him before. He didn't expect Zhuo Tian's cultivation to be at the peak of the spirit-detecting realm. It seemed that he would soon reach the soul transformation realm. Does the #1 genius have to have the highest cultivation? I'm only 14 years old, but Zhuo Tian is almost 20. He's been cultivating for much longer than me, so it's not strange for his cultivation to be higher than mine. If you give me half a year, I'm confident that I can surpass him. Zhuo Xiang said with a roll of her eyes. In other words, Zhuo Tian will be participating in the clan's tournament in 3 months. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. Nonsense. He'll definitely participate, and it's very likely that he'll target you. You'd better be careful. Alright, I'll be leaving first. If you have any problems, just come to the White Lotus Pavilion to find me. Zhuo Xiang rolled her eyes again. Then, her figure flashed and she floated away from the martial practice field. Zhuowen shook his head and ignored the respectful gazes of the people in the martial practice field. Instead, he jumped off the martial practice field and walked toward his residence in the outer court. In the outer courtyard, beside a dilapidated well, a skinny young girl was struggling to carry a wooden bucket that was half her height. She was limping as she walked, and it seemed like she was having a great deal of trouble. The young girl gritted her teeth, and a trace of pain appeared on her face. The weight of the wooden barrel was far beyond what she could bear, but she still walked forward with a determined look on her face. Chun-er. Can you carry such a heavy wooden barrel by yourself? Why don't we help you carry it? 2 young girls saw the young girl who was struggling to carry the wooden barrel from afar. They quickly came to the side of the young girl who was carrying water and asked with concern. The young girl carrying the water was Chun, who had always served Zhuowen. Previously, Zhuowen had asked Chun what she did in the outer court, but she didn't give him a clear answer. At that time, Zhuowen didn't pay much attention to it. He only wanted to take revenge on Zhuowu and Zhuoxinya. He didn't expect Chun to be doing such a tiring and difficult job in the outer court. Chun gently wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at the two young girls who were close to her age. She smiled and said, "No need. If Manager Chen finds out about this, you will be punished again. Although this kind of rough work is a little tiring, the pay is higher." Sigh. Chun ever since your young master was demoted to an ordinary disciple, his treatment has been much worse than before. Now, in order to support your young master, you still have to do this kind of rough and tiring work. I really don't know if it's worth it. One of the young girls sighed. Chun is willing to do this. Furthermore, Chun believes that the young master will definitely be able to regain his position. In Chun-er's eyes, the young master is definitely not a mediocre person. When Chun said this, her beautiful eyes emitted a strange light. The heavy burden on her shoulders had also become much lighter. The two young girls looked helplessly at Chun, who had no complaints or regrets. They knew that Chun-er's wish was very beautiful, but reality was cruel. After a while, the three young girls came to a rather good courtyard. Chun reluctantly put down the bucket of water and then gently rubbed her shoulder. Feeling the piercing pain from her shoulder, Chun knew that her shoulder was swollen again. Chun smiled helplessly and prepared to pour the water she carried into the water tank in the courtyard. The water tank in the courtyard was 10 square meters in size. If Chun wanted to fill the water tank, she would have to carry water back and forth more than 10 times to fill the tank. Even a strong man might not be able to handle such a task. However, this skinny young girl in front of her was actually doing this difficult task every day. Chun. A familiar voice suddenly came from behind Chun. Chapter 15. Despicable person relying on his position. Zhuowen's expression did not look good, especially when he saw Chun's slender arms struggling to carry a wooden bucket that was half the height of a person. Zhuowen's heart suddenly felt stifled when he saw Zhuowen's small arms carrying a wooden bucket that was half the height of a person with great difficulty. If a bucket that was half the height of a person was filled to the brim with water, it would weigh at least 100 pounds. Even a strong and sturdy man might not be able to bear such a weight. However, an 11-year-old girl in front of him had to carry such a heavy wooden bucket back and forth more than 10 times a day. Chun. Why do you have to do this kind of work? Zhuowen said with slight anger. Chun lowered her head slightly, not daring to look at Zhuowen. She clasped her hands together and said softly, "Young master. You shouldn't have come. You must be Chun's young master. In order to let you recuperate in peace, Chun has to do 2 people's worth of work every day. Moreover, the wages she earns are all used to buy medicine and food for you. I really don't know if it's worth it for Chun to do so much for you." A young girl who was not far from Zhuowen and Chun suddenly spoke up. Her face was filled with dissatisfaction towards Zhuowen. Lin. Don't say any more. Chun suddenly opened her mouth to stop her. Her face was a little flustered. Ai. Chun, your young master is no longer the 3rd young master of the past. His position is no longer the same as before. Aren't you suffering in vain by following him so loyally? I think it's better for you to enter one of the lofts in the inner courtyard and become a servant girl. That would be better than you are now. The young girl named Lin rolled her eyes at Zhuowen. Then, she began to earnestly persuade Chun to leave Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned slightly. This young girl named Lin was clearly bullying him. She was bullying him because he was in dire straits. She did not have the slightest taboo in her words. The news that Zhuowen had been promoted to a core disciple obviously had not spread within the Zhuo family. Now, only the family disciples and core members of the inner courtyard knew about it. The people of the outer courtyard basically did not know that Zhuowen had been promoted to a core disciple. They still thought that Zhuowen was still the previous young master who was in dire straits. Do you have the right to decide whether Chun-er stays or goes? You're just a lowly servant. What right do you have to talk to me like that? Zhuowen snorted coldly and exuded a trace of spirit. A powerful aura suddenly spread out, and for a moment, the entire courtyard became somewhat cold, and the other servants who were working in the courtyard unconsciously shivered. The maidservant named Lin obviously felt the strange change in the scene, but she didn't care. Instead, she looked at Zhuowen with a cold smile and said, "Zhuowen, do you really think you're still the third young master of the past? Right now, your status isn't much higher than mine, so why don't I have the right to criticize you? Right now, you're just an ordinary outer court disciple. Stop putting on airs in front of me." Zhuowen was suddenly amused by this ignorant maidservant. However, the current Zhuowen was no longer the same as before. He simply didn't want to pay attention to this clown-like maidservant. Therefore, Zhuowen gently hugged Chun-er and said, "Chun-er, let's go. I said that I'll take back what belongs to me. Now, I've done it. You don't have to suffer anymore. Young master, have you become a core disciple?" When Chun-er heard this, her originally gloomy eyes suddenly lit up. "Yes. In the future, you don't have to serve others anymore. Instead, others will serve you. Now, we have to go back and pack our things. We can move to the inner court soon," Zhuowen said softly with a smile on his face. "Manager Chen." Someone took Chun away without permission. "Chun hasn't finished her work for today." Seeing that Zhuowen actually wanted to take Chun away, Lin who originally had an unfriendly expression, actually shouted. Zhuowen's gaze turned cold. His eyes ruthlessly looked at Lin who was shouting at the top of her lungs, and said, "If you really want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Originally, Zhuowen didn't care much about this servant girl. After all, the difference in status between the two of them was too great. Zhuowen didn't want to lower himself to her level. However, Lin insisted on provoking him. Even if Zhuowen's personality was good, he couldn't help but want to kill Lin. A substantial killing intent suddenly shot out from Zhuowen's eyes. When Lin met Zhuowen's killing intent, she suddenly felt as if she had entered an ice cellar. Her whole body turned cold and her shouting stopped abruptly. You, Lin sat on the ground and looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. When she and Zhuowen looked at each other just now, she actually saw a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses in Zhuowen's eyes. That bloody scene made Lin feel nauseous. Her face also became incomparably pale. Zhuowen had just killed many people. Naturally, there was an indescribable murderous aura on his body. This murderous aura might be nothing to experts, but it was more intimidating to ordinary people. Creak. The wooden door in front of the courtyard was opened. Two burly men respectfully escorted an extremely fat middle-aged man into the courtyard. "What's wrong with you servants? Why have all of you stopped? Don't be lazy. All of you better work properly." The middle-aged man looked around the courtyard with some dissatisfaction and shouted sternly. The other servants, who had stopped to watch because of the dispute at Zhuowen's side, heard the middle-aged man's shout. They picked up the workers in their hands and continued to work diligently. "Manager Chen, you're finally back. This Zhuowen is extremely daring. He actually wants to take Chun away. You should know that Chun hasn't finished her work today." When Lin saw the fat manager Chen coming over, she hurriedly ran in front of the man. Her face revealed a flattering smile. At the same time, she pointed at Zhuowen with her right hand and started to complain. "Oh? Zhuowen? Is it the third young master who was demoted to an ordinary disciple?" Manager Chen narrowed his eyes and calmly sized up Zhuowen and Chun, who were standing at the entrance of the courtyard. "It's that trash. He really thinks that he's still the third young master of the past. The moment he came over, he was so arrogant and wanted to take Chun away." Lin glared fiercely at Zhuowen. There was a trace of hatred in her eyes. "Stop them. I, Chen Xingtong, have been a manager for more than 10 years. There has never been anyone who dares to take away a servant under my name without permission. Zhuowen, although you used to have a noble status, you're only an ordinary disciple now. You better abide by the rules. If anything happens to you in the end, don't blame me for being merciless." Manager Chen's fat face squeezed out an ugly smile. He casually waved at the two burly men behind him. The two burly men immediately blocked in front of Zhuowen. "Even a grasshopper dares to jump on top of my head. I've already given you a chance. Since you don't appreciate it, don't blame me for being merciless." Zhuowen snorted coldly. His entire body instantly turned into a shadow. Then, the two burly men in front of Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled to the ground at Manager Chen's feet. Manager Chen's eyelids twitched. He never thought that his two capable subordinates would be knocked unconscious by Zhuowen in a single blow. Manager Chen had spent a large sum of money to hire these two subordinates from the martial arts practice grounds. Their strength had reached the bone creation stage. Dealing with ordinary people was an easy task. It's rumored that Zhuowen does not have an armor spirit in his body. Furthermore, he does not even have the strength to truss up a chicken. How could he defeat two bone creation stage experts in an instant? What on earth is going on? Manager Chen was momentarily stunned by the reality before his eyes. He could not understand how a trash from a family could defeat two powerful bone creation stage cultivators in an instant. However, before Manager Chen could regain his senses, he felt his neck being strangled by an ice-cold hand. Then, he saw Zhuowen's frosty eyes staring coldly at him. "Zhuowen! You dare to kill me? I am the manager of the outer court. If you kill me, you will not be able to escape the family's punishment. I think you'd better be smart and let me go." Although Manager Chen's eyes were filled with fear, he still forced himself to calm down and shouted sternly at Zhuowen. "What's going on? Why is it so noisy here?" Another sound of the door opening was heard. A more dignified voice instantly sounded from outside the door. Then, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothes with a cold expression walked in. When Manager Chen heard this voice, his face was instantly filled with joy. With a pleased expression, he said to Zhuowen, "The manager is here. He is the manager of the outer court. It can be said that he is the commander of the outer court. His position is not inferior to the average court disciple. Zhuowen, you're dead this time. If you know what's good for you, you'd better let me go now." After the cold man walked in, he immediately saw Zhuowen and Manager Chen, who was being carried by Zhuowen. However, when the cold man saw Zhuowen's face, his face revealed a trace of undetectable shock. "Manager." This Zhuowen offended his superior and openly threatened to kill me. "Manager, you must be the judge of this." Manager Chen immediately revealed an aggrieved expression and said in a tearful voice. However, the cold man's gaze did not stop on Manager Chen. Instead, he looked at the cold expression on Zhuowen's face in front of him. The cold man quickly walked in front of Zhuowen and immediately bowed respectfully to Zhuowen. He said in a very respectful tone, "I am Lu Tao. Greetings to young Master Zhuowen. I don't know what happened here to make young master so angry." Lu Tao's humble attitude immediately caused everyone in the courtyard to open their mouths in shock. Lu Tao was the chief steward of the outer courtyard. He was in charge of almost all the affairs of the outer courtyard and possessed supreme authority. To the disciples of the outer court, Lu Tao was an extremely important person. No one in the outer court dared to disobey Lu Tao's orders. Even in the entire Zhou family, Lu Tao's status was not low. However, such an important person actually bowed respectfully to Zhuowen. Moreover, he looked a little cautious, as if he was afraid that his etiquette was not thorough enough. Manager Chen and Lin, who were originally feeling smug when they saw Lu Tao coming over, were stunned. They didn't expect that the dignified outer court general manager would be so humble and respectful to the inconspicuous Zhuo Wen, as if he was a subordinate speaking to his superior. Lu Tao looked at the expressionless Zhuo Wen. His heart was very nervous. He had personally witnessed how strong the limelight of this young man in front of him was in the martial arts field. Chapter 16. Hidden Dragon Guard Zhuo Wen was a little surprised as he looked at the respectful Lu Tao in front of him. He didn't expect that the outer court's general manager that Manager Chen mentioned would be so respectful towards him. It was obvious that this person had heard about his performance at the martial arts practice field. That's quite rare. You're quite well informed as an outer court person, Zhuo Wen said meaningfully. Young Master Zhuo Wen defeated the strongest disciple in the martial arts practice field, Zhuo Leng. Moreover, he defeated the martial arts practice field instructor with a single move. Even the inner court's Zhuo family's second master suffered a loss at the hands of young Master Zhuo Wen. I was coincidentally at the martial arts practice field at that time. Right now, young Master Zhuo Wen is already the most popular person in the entire Zhuo family. If this lowly one still can't recognize young Master Zhuo, this lowly one would really be blind. Lu Tao tried his best to lower his posture as he spoke in an abnormally respectful tone. Once Lu Tao's words left his mouth, the entire courtyard quietened down. Manager Chen, who was originally struggling in Zhuo Wen's hands, was also stunned. Although Manager Chen was only a small manager, his knowledge was extraordinary. He had a deep impression of Zhuo Leng from the martial arts practice field. Zhuo Leng was known as the strongest man in the martial arts practice field. His strength had already reached the peak of the Qi refinement realm. It was said that he was only a step away from the divine valor realm. Once he reached the divine valor realm, he would become a core disciple of the Zhuo family's inner court and his status would rise. However, such a young expert with such a high cultivation was actually defeated by this good-for-nothing young master. This made Manager Chen even more shocked. What made Manager Chen even more incredulous was that even the martial arts practice field instructor, whose strength was much higher than Zhuo Wen's, was defeated by Zhuo Wen in a single move. Moreover, from Lu Tao's words, he could faintly tell that the inner court's second master, who had great power and influence, had suffered a loss at the hands of Zhuo Wen. At this moment, Manager Chen finally realized how terrifying the young master in front of him was. He knew that this time, he had provoked someone he should not have provoked. Young Master Zhuo Wen. I beg you, please don't kill me. What happened just now was because I was bewitched by this bitch. I had eyes but failed to see and listen to this bitch's words. I actually tried to hurt you, young master. Manager Chen saw that something was amiss and hurriedly pushed all the blame to the servant girl, Lin Er, who was not far away. At this moment, Lin Er's face was ghastly pale. When she saw the outer court's head steward Lu Tao acting so respectfully in front of Zhuo Wen, she knew that Zhuo Wen might have really turned over a new leaf. Thinking of her fierce words and actions just now, Lin Er felt a burst of unease in her heart. She was afraid that Zhuo Wen would take revenge on her because of this. After all, it seemed that Zhuo Wen's position in the family had become extraordinary. Killing a lowly servant girl like her was as easy as flipping his hand. Lu Tao glanced coldly at the frightened Manager Chen and said respectfully, "Young master, please don't worry about me. How did this person offend you? They're just ants who don't know the difference between life and death. These two people spoke rudely to me and even wanted to harm me. Head steward Lu should know what to do, right?" Zhuo Wen glanced indifferently at Manager Chen and Lin Er. He casually threw Manager Chen to the ground and looked straight at Lu Tao. These two servants are actually so audacious. Young Master Zhuo Wen is now an honorable core disciple. You actually have ill intentions towards him. Men! Drag these two people down and lock them in the underground dungeon. Lu Tao was shocked. Then, he stared coldly at Manager Chen and Lin Er, who were at a loss. In his heart, he scolded them for being stupid. They could have provoked anyone, but they had to provoke this vicious and merciless master. Lu Tao had personally witnessed Zhuowen's cruel methods in the martial arts practice field. The scene of Zhuowen crippling Zhuo Wu's arms was still vivid in his mind. Head Steward Lu. Spare us, please don't lock us in the underground dungeon. Otherwise, we'll die. When Manager Chen and Lin heard the words underground dungeon, their faces turned pale. The underground dungeon was famous in the outer court. There was nothing in the dungeon, and it was pitch black. The people who were locked in there had either gone mad or committed suicide. It could be said that the prisoners in there were worse off than death. You can only blame yourselves for not knowing how to appreciate kindness. You actually offended young Master Zhuowen. Young Master Zhuowen is already merciful for not killing you on the spot. Lu Tao snorted coldly. Then, he immediately ordered his subordinates behind him to take the two people away. After dealing with the two people, Lu Tao came to Zhuowen with a flattering smile and said, "Young Master Zhuowen, I wonder if you're satisfied with how I've handled it." Zhuowen nodded lightly. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Lu Tao was being so respectful to him. It was obvious that he was returning the favor. Zhuowen's status in the family had risen sharply. In a short period of time, he had become a popular genius in the family. As long as such a person didn't fall, he would definitely have a place in the family in the future. Lu Tao obviously saw the potential and opportunity in Zhuowen. Therefore, he treated Zhuowen with all his heart. In fact, his goal was to build a good relationship with Zhuowen so that he could do things in the family in the future. Zhuowen didn't care about Lu Tao's intentions. After all, people wanted to climb up and water flowed down. Who didn't want to have a meteoric rise and stand out? Although Lu Tao, the manager of the outer court, didn't have much influence in the inner court, he was like a local tyrant in the outer court. More importantly, Lu Tao had a large number of subordinates. Although they were all servants with low strength, they were still a force that couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, Zhuowen heard that the people of the outer court were very well informed. Zhuowen just happened to need someone to collect information for him. Now, although Zhuowen relied on his own talent to stand firm in the family, Zhuowen didn't have a force he could trust. Moreover, in the inner court, his second uncle was watching covetously from the shadows. It was absolutely necessary to establish a force that he could trust. Otherwise, even if he was extremely strong, it would be difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Lu Tao was the manager of the outer court. He had many subordinates. Moreover, he was very scheming and very astute. Zhuowen just happened to lack such a character. After pondering for a while, Zhuowen looked at Lu Tao with a smile and said, "Lu Tao, are you interested in becoming the manager of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion?" Hearing this, Lu Tao's face suddenly revealed an expression of ecstasy. He quickly bowed and said with a slightly trembling mouth, "Lu Tao is willing to become the manager of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. I hope this little one can solve young master's problems in the future." Lu Tao had been waiting for Zhuowen to say these words. Originally, Lu Tao kept lowering his status in order to gain Zhuowen's favor. It would be best if Zhuowen could put him in an important position. Although Lu Tao's power in the outer court was monstrous and could cover the sky with one hand, it was only in the outer court. Once he entered the inner court, he wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Now that he suddenly became the manager of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, he didn't have to be so careful in the inner court like before. The Veiled Dragon Pavilion was one of the top 5 pavilions in the inner court. Not only were there many pavilions, but it was also said that there was a team of 100 guards. It could be said that the Veiled Dragon Pavilion itself was not a weak force in the inner court. I hope you can do so. If this young master finds out that you have any thoughts of betrayal, I don't need to say what will happen to you. Zhuowen's mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile as he indifferently looked at Lu Tao. Lu Tao looked at Zhuowen's cold eyes and couldn't help but think of the cruel methods that Zhuowen showed in the martial arts field. He couldn't help but shiver and quickly said, "This little one absolutely wouldn't dare." "Young master, rest assured." "Good. As long as you show enough loyalty, there will be many benefits for you in the future." Now, send some people to my residence to clean it up. We will go to the Veiled Dragon Pavilion now. Zhuowen flicked his sleeves and left with Chun Er. Lu Tao respectfully responded and then began to send his subordinates to Zhuowen's shabby residence to clean it up. It had to be said that Lu Tao's efficiency was very high. In about a quarter of an hour, Zhuowen's residence was actually cleaned up. Then, he swaggered into the inner court with a group of people. Along the way, Zhuowen relied on the clan token in his hand to smoothly enter the inner court. After seeing the clan token in Zhuowen's hand, the guards of the inner court revealed a look of awe. When Lu Tao first saw the clan token in Zhuowen's hand, his face also revealed a look of shock. The clan token was the personal token of the current head of the family, Zhuo Xiangding. He didn't expect that the head of the family would give such an important thing to Zhuowen. It could be seen how much importance the head of the family valued Zhuowen. Therefore, Lu Tao was even more determined to follow Zhuowen. He knew that the young man in front of him definitely had a boundless future. On the other hand, Chun Er was very curious. Along the way, she looked around with an excited smile on her face. When the group finally arrived in front of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, everyone was stunned. Zhuowen, who had always been calm, couldn't help but be stunned at the first sight of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. In the middle of a wide square, there was a several zhang tall stone tablet. The stone tablet was engraved with the words Hidden Dragon Pavilion. Behind the square, there was a tall red lacquer gate. Two huge stone lions were squatting on either side of the gate, looking very imposing. Behind the door was a huge pavilion. At a glance, it occupied a very large area. As expected of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Just looking at it from afar, it has the aura of a mountain. Lu Tao looked at the Veiled Dragon Pavilion in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. At this moment, in front of the huge square in front of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, there were 100 guards wearing dark yellow armor standing upright. In front of the guards, there were two men riding tall blood jade horses, looking down at Zhuowen's group from above. Zhuowen slightly frowned as he looked at the 100 guards in front of him. The purpose of these guards was obviously to stop Zhuowen's group. Young master. These guards are called the Veiled Dragon Guards. They are the guards of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. The two men riding on the blood jade horses are the commander and vice-commander of the Veiled Dragon Guards. Their strength is at the inner organ stage. Looking at their attitude, it seems like they don't have good intentions. Chapter 17. Intimidating the commander of the Hidden Dragon Guards was a middle-aged man with a full beard. His thick eyebrows were upside down and his fierce eyes were glaring at Lu Ming. He gave off an imposing aura. This middle-aged man sat on the blood jade horse and looked at Zhuowen's group with provocation in his eyes. Lu Tao strode to the front of the blood jade horse and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "You must be the two commanders of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Now, young Master Zhuowen has come to take over the Veiled Dragon Pavilion under the order of the family head. You are just a servant. What right do you have to talk to us?" A cold snort was heard. Then, a fierce fist wind whizzed toward Lu Tao. Before Lu Tao could react, he spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward, falling at Zhuowen's feet. The one who attacked Lu Tao was a handsome young man with a white face and no beard. At this moment, the young man had his hands behind his back and an arrogant look appeared on his face. Zhuowen's pupils slightly shrank. This young man was the vice-commander who was sitting on the other blood jade horse. His cultivation had already reached the level of viscera strengthening stage. Furthermore, seeing how the young man had cleanly taken care of Lu Tao, Zhuowen was certain that this arrogant vice-commander's strength was definitely above that of the instructor on the training field. Young Master Zhuowen. Your people are so unreasonable. You won't mind if I teach them a lesson, right? The vice-commander clapped his hands and looked at Zhuowen meaningfully. He turned around and wanted to climb back onto the blood jade horse. Young master. This old servant. Lu Tao covered his chest and retreated behind Zhuowen in shame. As the supervisor of the outer court, Lu Tao's strength was not weak. He had reached the divine valor stage. Even so, he was easily dealt with by the vice-commander of the hidden dragon guards. This made Lu Tao, who was originally proud of himself, feel a little sad. Lu Tao originally thought that his status in the inner court would rise after he climbed onto Zhuo Wen's thigh. However, he was defeated by the vice-commander in one move right after arriving at the hidden dragon pavilion. This was a great loss of face. Humph. You think you can leave so easily after beating up my men? Zhuo Wen's lips cracked open as a vicious expression appeared on his face. Clearly, these hidden dragon guards wanted to intimidate their new master. Perhaps in their eyes, their new master was only a brat who was still wet behind the ears. If he wanted these unruly hidden dragon guards to submit, he would have to make them acknowledge his strength. Zhuo Wen's legs bounced off the ground, and he shot toward the deputy commander like a cannonball. His aura instantly rose to its peak, and an ear-piercing dragon's roar erupted from Zhuo Wen's body. Roar! Zhuo Wen's fists were like a giant dragon as they slammed toward the young man's waist. Bursts of whistling sounds accompanied by strong whirlwinds exploded in the surrounding air. The young man also felt the powerful aura behind him. He immediately flipped over and spread his arms like a bird's wings. Then, he dodged Zhuo Wen's punch with an unbelievable posture. Bang! The ground where the young man was standing suddenly spread out like a spider web, even exposing the yellow soil underneath. When they saw how terrifying Zhuo Wen's punch was, regardless of whether it was Lu Tao's servants or the solemn hidden dragon guards on the other side, all of them could not help but open their mouths in shock. One had to know that the ground of the hidden dragon pavilion was made of hard limestone slabs. This kind of ground was indestructible and difficult to break. A normal divine valor realm expert might not be able to break a limestone slab even if they used all their strength. However, Zhuo Wen was able to shatter dozens of limestone slabs with just one punch. This kind of destructive power was something that even a strong Viscera realm expert might not be able to do. However, Zhuo Wen's expression was very calm. Right now, he had the strength of 4 dragons in his body. His overall strength was far beyond a normal divine valor realm expert. Even a strong Viscera realm expert might not be as strong as him. The young man's face was slightly pale. He didn't think that the young man in front of him would have such a large amount of strength. If he had been hit by that punch, he might have been seriously injured. The middle-aged man who had been coldly watching also revealed a trace of astonishment. He clearly didn't think that Zhuo Wen would have such a monstrous strength. You dodged pretty fast. I just don't know if you'll be able to dodge this attack. Licking his slightly dry lips, Zhuo Wen's eyes turned scarlet. A sudden urge to kill rushed into Zhuo Wen's mind. Bang! A huge fluctuation surged out from Zhuo Wen's legs. Suddenly, Zhuo Wen's bones started to crackle. Then, the 4 huge dragon auras prostrated at Zhuo Wen's feet. Being surrounded by the 4 huge dragon auras, Zhuo Wen was like a heavenly god with an overflowing aura. What a powerful aura! How could such an aura appear on a divine valor realm armored warrior? The young man's face suddenly changed. His originally pale face turned ashen. He didn't think that the new master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion would have such a powerful strength at such a young age. Sure enough, those who could become the master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion were all simple. The young man slightly regretted provoking Zhuo Wen. This guy's speed is too fast. It's too late to dodge now. Looks like I can only face him head-on. The young man clenched his teeth and immediately waved his hands. Then, a pale yellow light suddenly emerged from his body. Iron Rock Defense. The young man roared. Then, the pale yellow light suddenly formed an oval-shaped shield in front of him. On the surface of the shield, there was a trace of gray-white rock spots. Zhuo Liancheng was actually forced to use the soul skill of his armor soul. Looks like the new master of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion is not simple. The middle-aged man on the blood jade horse looked at the shield in front of the young man and finally began to look serious. Roar! Roar! A huge dragon's roar followed. Then, Zhuo Wen's fists, accompanied by the aura of 4 huge dragons, fiercely smashed onto the shield in front of the young man. With a cracking sound, the seemingly indestructible shield actually began to crack. The young man couldn't help but kneel down under the impact of Zhuowen's huge force. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He didn't think that his strength of 4 dragons wouldn't be able to break the huge shield summoned by the young man. Looks like that sword shadow is finally coming in handy. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly. Then, with a thought, the sword silhouettes within his sea of consciousness immediately emitted a resonant sword cry. After that, 10 sword silhouettes with a cold glint appeared behind Zhuowen. Break for me. Clang! The 10 sword shadows stabbed into the cracks in the shield in front of him. With a bang, the small cracks on the surface of the shield suddenly spread out like a dense spider web. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, the shield shattered into pieces. The young man spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. He was caught by the veiled dragon guard behind him. At this moment, the square suddenly fell into silence. Everyone stared blankly at the young man in the center of the square for a long time without saying a word. At this moment, the young man's charm was deeply engraved in everyone's minds. Chun-Er looked at Zhuowen's tall and straight figure. Her delicate face was full of pride. She knew that her young master had finally transformed. On the other hand, Lu Tao's eyes were shining. Although he saw Zhuowen defeat the instructor in the martial arts field with his own eyes, the instructor in the martial arts field couldn't compare to the vice commander of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. No matter if it was the cultivation method, armor skills, or the quality of the armor soul, the instructor in the martial arts field couldn't compare to the vice commander of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Now, Zhuowen actually defeated the vice commander of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Now, Zhuowen was even more mysterious in Lu Tao's eyes. At the same time, Lu Tao was even more respectful of Zhuowen. You're the commander of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, right? I think you're slightly stronger than that trash of a vice commander. I'd like to see how strong you are. Zhuowen's eyes were scarlet as he coldly said. Once Zhuowen's words came out, everyone's eyes immediately looked at the silent commander sitting on the blood jade horse. When the young man heard Zhuowen call him trash, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood and directly fainted. The middle-aged man slightly frowned. He deeply looked at the aggressive young man not far away. He laughed and dismounted from the horse. He respectfully knelt on one knee in front of Zhuowen and said, "Subordinate Zhuowen greets the pavilion master." Zhuowen was startled. He didn't expect that the man who looked very provocative at the beginning would be so willing to worship him as his master. This made Zhuowen faintly feel that something was wrong. Looking at the bearded middle-aged man in front of him, Zhuowen could feel an aura that made him very uncomfortable. Zhuowen was sure that the man's strength was much stronger than the vice commander. Although the man was very respectful, Zhuowen didn't know why he could feel a trace of hatred from the man's deep eyes. This feeling made Zhuowen a little confused, but Zhuowen couldn't help but take it seriously. This commander of the Veiled Dragon Guards is a little strange. Zhuowen slightly frowned and secretly raised his guard. Seeing that their leader also bowed to Zhuowen, the 100 Veiled Dragon Guards behind the middle-aged man immediately knelt on one knee in front of Zhuowen and shouted in unison, "Subordinate greets the pavilion master." The 100 people's voices were very loud and clear. In an instant, the empty square was filled with echoes. Zhuowen's expression was calm. He didn't care much about the Veiled Dragon Guard's etiquette. However, behind Zhuowen, Lu Tao's hands were slightly trembling. He was so excited that his entire body was trembling. The Veiled Dragon Guard's cultivations were all at the Divine Valor realm. Any one of them had a position in the outer court that was no weaker than him, the outer court's general manager. Not to mention, there was also the powerful Veiled Dragon Guard's commander, Zhua Hanzhong. And this group of people was actually kneeling in front of him. Although they weren't kneeling to him, Lu Tao was still shocked to see this scene.